gentlemen, welcome to the Town of Los Gatos Joint Town Council Parking Authority and Redevelopment Agency meeting of October 3rd, 2011. The meeting is called to order. I request that you turn off your cell phones or put them on mute right now so that we're not disturbed during the course of the meeting, and ask our clerk to please call roll.
Councilmember Stephen Leonardis.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Spector.
Here.
Councilmember Diane McNutt.
Here.
Vice Mayor Steve Rice.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Joe Przinsky.
Here. As is our tradition, tonight we have the privilege of having a young leader in our community with us to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And he's sitting right up here in the front with his mom. Let me say a few words about him so that you know him a little better than you do right now. This is Keith Kulik. He's an 8th grade student at Fisher Middle School. He really enjoys his Spanish 2 class this year and also loves science and history. He's been a competitive swimmer for years. He played club water polo since he was 9 years old. This year he's decided to play water polo year-round and currently plays for Stanford's youth water polo team. When he's not studying, you will find him in the pool, I would assume, and also when he's not at a council meeting. Last year, Keith had the opportunity to attend a water polo camp through the Olympic Development Program at the Olympic Training Facility in Colorado Springs. Keith also has been learning to surf and just recently purchased his first surfboard. He tries to get over to Capitola as much as he possibly can, and thus the blonde hair and the tan face. This summer, Keith and his family spent 5 days in Paris and then 2 weeks traveling all through Italy, from Florence, Tuscany, Venice, the Italian Alps, Verona, and the coast. In fact, it has been told that he taught his mom a lot during this trip to Italy. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd ask if you would welcome Keith Kulik to the dais. And please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Keith. Keith, you want to come back around this way? I thought he was going to go shake the hands of everyone in the audience on the way out. Thanks a lot, buddy. One more time, let's thank Keith for presenting the pledge tonight. All right, the next item on our agenda is the closed session report. Madam Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. The council met in closed session on the 3 items listed on the agenda that was duly noticed and posted. As to the first item, council took no formal action. As to the second item, council met with the labor negotiators on the ASME agreement, and they town council authorized the negotiators to complete negotiations and return to the town council with the final agreement for consideration. And on the third item, which is Quintana versus town pending litigation matter, the town council authorized the town to retain outside legal counsel for that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Next item is the council and manager reports, but I would ask for our public tonight, if you are interested in speaking to any item on the agenda or during verbal communication, would you please fill out one of those buff cards that are in front of you at your seats and turn them into our clerk on my left. Council matters. Any issue that the members of the council would like to present to us tonight? Seeing none, manager matters.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council and community, a couple items. We had a very busy weekend in town. First, with the community garage sale on Saturday, with nearly 150 locations throughout Los Gatos and Montecito, and nearly or over 100 of those were pre-registered and mapped both online and through our print publication. Also on Saturday was the Friends of the Library paperback book sale, selling nearly 100 items as a prelude to the general book sale set for Saturday, October 15th from 10 to 4 here in the council chambers. Our library contractor was also working on Saturday, finishing up both street and parking improvements as scheduled. And today we have opened a dozen new parking spaces servicing the Civic Center and surrounding area. Last, as a reminder, we are continuing to recruit for board and commission applicants. Applications are available online and due by Friday, October 13th. I would now like to introduce for Did You Know, Sergeant Carrie Harris, to discuss appropriately here in Emergency Preparedness Month, personal emergency preparedness. Sergeant Harris.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. During and after a natural disaster, features of critical infrastructure may be significantly compromised. Those may include access to food, water, shelter, gas, electricity, and telephone, as well as public safety services. The town of Los Gatos, through its Los Gatos Prepared program, has made it its mission to have every resident and business prepared to care for themselves for at least 72 hours after disaster. The program conducts public awareness and training programs throughout the year, but focuses special attention on October Emergency Preparedness Month here in Los Gatos and the anniversary of the Loma Prieta earthquake. This month, Los Gatos Prepared displays are being held at 10 events, including at the farmers markets on October 2nd and 9th, at the Los Gatos Prepared Red Cross Blood Drive on October 5th, at the Senior Health Fair and at Congregation Shur Hadash on October 8th, at 5 shopping center locations in town on October 16th, and at St. Mary's Church on October 30th. In January 2010, a 7.0 earthquake struck Port-au-Prince, Haiti, killing 300,000 people. We here in the States could sit back and take comfort that our superior construction would protect us. Then in March 2011, the 9.0 earthquake struck Japan, killing 20,000 people. This is a place that is at the forefront of earthquake-resistant engineering. There are 2 important messages to learn from these events. First, that the scope and scale of the devastation from a major quake can be worse than our worst-case scenarios, and that surviving such events may well boil down to how prepared we are to care for ourselves and our families. There may be no one else to help. The Loma Prieta earthquake was a significant event here in Los Gatos, but the quake projected by the USGS to strike in the next 30 years will make it look minor by comparison. Los Gatans need to prepare for it, and they need to prepare for it now. For more information about Los Gatos Prepared, locations of training events, and PDF copies of educational forums, please go to the website that's shown on the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergeant Harris. Any questions for Sergeant Harris? Thank you very much, Sergeant. The next item on our agenda is our consent agenda. These are items that can be acted on in a single motion. And I'm going to ask, is any member of the council wishing to pull an item? Madam McNutt?
Thank you. Mayor, I'd like to pull item number 8, please.
Okay, item number 8.
And Mr. Mayor, I would also highlight, we provided desk items today on items 2 and 7, and also an administrative correction to the minutes, item 9.
All right, thank you very much for that, that update. And any other items that anyone wishes to pull from council? Any member of the public wish to pull an item from the consent agenda? I would have just one opportunity to clarify. Item number 1 is the arts plan. Although I don't wish to pull it, I just want to make sure that what we are authorizing by this item is to implement the Forbes Mill Footbridge Mural Program and the Banners Program.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is all that is before the council tonight. Other parts of the arts plan require funding and further discussion with council.
All right, because I am somewhat concerned about the Welcoming Wildcats proposal, and I would assume at a certain point we will have the opportunity to discuss that with the Arts Commission as well. All right, with that clarification, any other clarifications necessary? Then can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda excluding item number 8? Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move to approve the consent calendar, consent items exclusive of number 8 and number 1 as clarified by the manager and the mayor.
Thank you, Madam Spector. Any second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. And we will see item number 8, the North 40 specific plan, at the end of our public hearings tonight. All right, that brings us to our public hearings. As soon as we do verbal communication, of course. No confusion here. Verbal communication is an opportunity for any member of our public to speak to us about any item that is not on tonight's agenda. And I do have one card for verbal communication, and it's a multiple party card, and we would invite the following people to the microphone: Jessica Garcia Cuete, Michelle Lindeman, and Carl Guardino. Would the three wish to approach the mic?
I'm used to hearing my name and them saying approach the bench.
Yeah.
So thank you. Mayor Przinsky, members of the Town Council, my name's Carl Guardino, and with my community colleagues here this evening, we wanted to once again come out and invite you, as well as staff and our community, to an event on Thanksgiving morning that we believe has become a tradition of our valley in a very positive way. I'm referring to the 7th annual Applied Materials Silicon Valley Turkey Trot, Run or Walk for Health, Hope, in a Home. As you may know, in just the first previous 6 years of the Turkey Trot, we've been able to raise and donate more than $1.5 million to 3 local nonprofits who serve the neediest residents right here in Silicon Valley, and that's the Second Harvest Food Bank, the Housing Trust of Santa Clara County, and the Children's Health Initiative. This year, we expect 17,500 participants, supported by 900 volunteers, and we hope to raise more than $500,000 for those 3 nonprofits this year alone. It's a fun and healthy way to start the holiday season. It's geared for the whole family. It includes a 5K run or walk. More than 2/3 of those do walk it. A 10K run and several special competitions, including our Kids Fun Run for ages 2 through 9, our Fry's Electronics Quickest Cop Fastest Firefighter competition that Scott Seaman has supported with his team every year, our Virgin America Mercury News costume contest, as well as our Can Do community calendar. So seeing that my time is running out quickly, I want to mention with pride that last year Los Gatos was the winner of the Extra Small City Division of our Mayor's Cup Community Challenge, presented by Brocade Communications. So we want to thank Mayor Przinsky and Council Member Spector and Town Manager Larson and Planning Commissioner Sayoc for participating in last year's event. We hope you will encourage your colleagues and your professional staff colleagues to join us this year. So let me turn it over to my colleague Michelle Lindeman from Brocade, who'd like to say a few words about the Mayor's Cup, and I will present these. Thanks for all you do for our community.
Thanks, Carl. Hi, I'm Michelle Lindeman with Brocade. In support of Brocade's commitment to public-private partnerships, Brocade is proud to present the 4th Annual Mayor's Cup Challenge as part of the 7th Annual Applied Materials Silicon Valley Turkey Trot. The Brocade's Mayor Cup Challenge recognizes Silicon Valley cities and towns in 4 categories based on population: extra small city Los Altos Hills, Los Gatos, and Montecito; small city Campbell, Gilroy, Morgan Hill, and Saratoga. Medium-sized cities, Cupertino, Milpitas, Mountain View, and Palo Alto. Large cities, San Jose, Santa Clara County, and Sunnyvale. The winning cities or towns or counties in each size category will receive the following: the Brocades Mayor's Cup for prominent display in your lobby, recognition at the race and in post-race press, and bragging rights for the entire year. We hope
Okay.
you'll come and participate in this year's Turkey Trot on Thanksgiving morning. And with your leadership, we know that the Mayor's Cup will look wonderful on display in the mantle here at City Hall again this year. Thank you.
Thank you, and I do want to say, we have kind of come to the end of our time for our presentation. But we are the champions, and those other small cities should never forget it, and we do not intend to let the cup go away. In fact, there's no way you can actually get it away from us, so just keep that in mind. I want to thank Carl Gardino and the rest of the members of the organization for, again, bringing this opportunity to the town and to our valley. We really do appreciate the opportunity to do this. It's for a great cause and a really fun opportunity, a fun time was had by all. So thank you again for presenting. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak under verbal communications at this time? Seeing none, I think we're going to go on then to our public hearings. And the first public hearing is the item 11 on our agenda. It's the Plan Development PD 10-004 and Negative Declaration 10-002. It's for the project located at 16213 Los Gatos Boulevard, and the property owner is Margaret Bishop. The applicant is Santa Clara Development Company. Okay, and I'd like the member of staff, it's Suzanne Davis, who's going to present for us at this time.
Good evening. You do have a desk item for this application, and it includes a number of letters of support for the project. There is one letter in opposition. We also prepared some information on the current BMP units in the town and those that are coming online. And the applicant has provided some information on private open space areas for each of the proposed residences. The project site is 1.9 acres. It's the entire block encompassed by Los Gatos Boulevard, Mitchell Avenue, George Street, and Roberts Road. The former Honda dealership occupied this site and a property across the street on the corner of Shannon and Los Gatos Boulevard. The property across the street is not part of this application. It is owned by a separate party and doesn't currently have a proposal on the site. The Honda dealer relocated out of town in 2009, and then the service operation continued on the site into fall of 2010. The CDAC, the Conceptual Development Advisory Committee, considered a higher density project on the site in December of 2009. Based on that input, the applicant returned to the CDAC in March of 2010 with a 24-unit proposal, and then developed the current plan that you are considering this evening. The number of units has dropped to 22. The site was formerly listed on the town's housing sites inventory and was a potential site for a higher density overlay zone. It was removed when we had an application proposed for this site, as was the site on the Swanson Ford property. The only reason we took it off is because we had a valid development proposal, not that it wasn't considered valid for affordable housing overlay. The Planning Commission considered this project on September 14th. Initially, the Commission had a motion to approve that failed on a 3-3 split vote. So the Commission decided to forward the application to the Council for consideration with their comments. The proposal is to demolish the existing auto dealership and construct 22 new single-family residences. 2 BMP units are required as part of the project. The applicant is proposing some site improvements that are not actually required elements, but they've incorporated into the project to beautify the area, and those include bulb outs at the corners. They're fairly large bulb outs on the corners of Mitchell and George, and on the corner of Roberts and George, and that'll help slow down traffic. They'll do a little traffic calming and give some additional area for planting and sidewalks. There's also smaller bulb outs on the opposite corners. The center meeting in Los Gatos Boulevard will be reconstructed and fully landscaped. And on Mitchell Avenue, in addition to this new sidewalk that'll go around the perimeter of the project, it's also going to be extended along the south side of Mitchell, so there'll be a sidewalk on both sides for the length of the property. 2 BMP units are required by code. The applicant is proposing 1 on-site, which would be a moderate level income unit, and 1 off-site, which would be a low income unit. The unit on-site is a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 2,300 square foot unit. This would be the largest unit in the BMP inventory. The off-site unit is proposed to be sold to a low-income recipient or family. This would be the first low-income for-sale BMP unit in the town's inventory. The Planning Commission had some discussion on this issue. They decided to ultimately, we did have some planning commissioners recommend that both BMP units be on site. So that's something for the council to deliberate this evening, and I think the applicant will be speaking to that as well. A traffic study was not required for this project, but the applicant completed one voluntarily. We did look at cumulative impact analysis as part of that, and I know that at Planning Commission, a question was asked whether the Safeway was factored in because it wasn't yet open and now is, and yes, Safeway was factored in along with all the pending and proposed projects in the town. The determination from the traffic analysis was that we won't have any impact to surrounding intersections. A residential use is our lowest traffic generator. Relative to school impact, the project would generate between 10 to 15 new students. At the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant offered a $150,000 contribution to the school district, and this is in addition to the school impact fees that would be assessed for the proposal. The Planning Commission made several recommendations to council. One was regarding the BMP units and a preference to have them both on site. One was that the architecture and site application be reviewed by the Planning Commission as opposed to the Development Review Committee. And we did prepare verbatim minutes, and those are attached to your reports, so you have all the details from that meeting. Council action this evening. In order to approve the project, you have to make findings that for the zone change, that it's consistent with the general plan, make the negative declaration, adopt a mitigation and monitoring plan. All the mitigation measures that came up with the environmental review have been included as performance standards in the PD ordinance and in the mitigation monitoring program. There is a new plan development ordinance in front of you. The only changes to that ordinance are that we eliminated condition 50, and we amended the wording on conditions 70 and 71. Changes are shown with strikeout in bold so you can see what exactly staff did to those 3 conditions. So this loose plan development ordinance would be the one that you would introduce if you approve the project. And that concludes staff's presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Any questions from council? Before we begin our questioning, maybe we should disclose if we have seen or had contact with the applicant or aligned people with this project. I had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Robeson on one occasion, I believe, in recent days regarding the project, and have visited the site on a couple of occasions. Members of the council?
I've met with Mr. Robeson a couple times, as well as his representatives, and visited the site on numerous occasions.
I also met with Mr. Robeson and visited the site.
I met with Mr. Robeson at the site in August, talked with him by phone today, and visited the neighborhood independently.
I've also met with Mr. Robeson and his representatives and drive by the site quite frequently.
Okay, thank you. So, council, questions for staff regarding the application? Very clear presentation then, obviously. All right, and any further clarification from staff before we go to the public hearing?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Leonardis.
I noticed that in the fiscal impact category here, page 5, it says the fiscal impacts of the proposed project have not been analyzed or compared to the potential fiscal impact of an exclusively residential development, excuse me, rather than a mixed-use or commercial project. The project would remove 20,700 square feet of commercial space, and I'm just wondering why there would be no analysis provided by staff.
Staff wish to address that question?
No.
There was no fiscal analysis requested for this project at this point in time. The prior use was a known separation from the Honda dealership as they were building a new facility further north in Silicon Valley several years ago, and so it's been a vacant property for well over 6 months. And that concludes that analysis at this point.
Any further questions, Mr. Leonardis? All right. Then, unless staff wishes to say more on that regard.
I did want to point out that there is a general plan policy that states that residential is the preferred land use south of Roberts Road. That is also affirmed by the Los Gatos Boulevard plan, although it states south of Shannon.
Although Shannon abuts the property on the east side. Yes.
Pretty close.
All right. Then we're going to open the public hearing, and we have some cards from our public to speak, and the first card is from Mr. Robeson, who is the applicant. Mr. Robeson.
Good evening, Mayor Brzezinski and members of the Town Council and Town staff. I'm Mark Robeson. When you look at any development, including this one, how it complies with town policy is one of the most important aspects of a project. And with respect to this particular project, it complies with all the town's major land use policies, including the town's general plan, housing element, and boulevard plan. But more importantly than that, the way the project looks, feels, and works is a more important criteria for the people who walk by the site, drive by the site, or those that live across the street. And so in order to best show you what that experience is going to be, I've put together a series of before and after photographs I'd like to share with you. In addition to that, I have a full computer simulation drive-by that I'd like to show you, but it's not part of my presentation due to time constraints, but I would like to show it to you if you'd like to see it. This is what the project looks like in its present condition. It's a blight, and it's not attractive, and it doesn't look like the town, and I think it detracts from the boulevard. This is what it could look like. And when you read the boulevard plan, one of the things in the boulevard plan is it says that a new project should look and feel like the town. This project is going to look and feel like the town. It has that character. In addition to that, and then what staff talked about is we're planning some significant landscape improvements. You've got a median here. You've got heavy landscaping along the boulevard, including a low stone wall, which is a classic detail that you see throughout town and one that's very memorable. We're also preserving some of the significant trees, including this large redwood tree. The architecture also is very unique. There's 18 different elevations out of 22 homes, so each home will be different, and that's one of the policy goals of the boulevard plan, is that there not be standard architecture, and this one won't be. Each home is going to be different. And lastly, the quality of the materials are also going to be of the highest caliber. On this particular home, there's shingles, cedar shingles, which I think is also going to add to the character and the experience, the ambiance of the street. Let me show you the next slide, please. This is looking south on Los Gatos Boulevard at Roberts. Next photograph is what it could look like. One of the most important things I want to point out about this is that we're preserving the view shed of the ridgeline, and that's also one of the policy goals in the boulevard plan, and this development will protect that. Let me show you the next slide. This is looking to the east on Roberts Road, and you can see the service bays as they sit now and what it could look like. And this is the proposed home. You can see the pieces of the home over here. One of the most important things I want to point out about the plan is the scale of the architecture. This is a very pedestrian-friendly scaled homes. This home that you're looking at here is 20 foot 6 inches. By comparison, the project that we built on the other end of Roberts Road at Sarah Court, those homes are 28 feet tall, and most of the other homes that we've built in town and those that have been approved typically are much taller than this. This house is 20 foot 6 inches, and I think is nice. The other homes in the development will range to 25 feet. couple of other important things that were brought up in the staff report, but I want to point out here. You can see the street trees right here, which not only add ambiance and character, you'll know when it's spring by the blossoms and fall by the color, but in addition to that, because of the parkway, it separates a pedestrian from the street, and this is an important pedestrian feature. The bulb out, you can't really see it here, but because of the angle, but this is one of the locations where there will be a bulb out, as staff mentioned. It's a traffic calming device and will enhance the pedestrian crossing from one side of the street to the other, and I think that that's an important improvement along with some of the others that I mentioned a minute ago. Let me go back to the first slide. And the next one, please. The property in its present condition, as I said, is a blight, and this development is going to restore the historic pattern on that street and the character of the neighborhood, and I think that that is really important from a community standpoint. In addition to that, the project's also going to do some other important things that I want to point out. One of which is the development, as I said, is going to provide significant public improvements. It's one thing to put a boulevard plan together, but it's a whole nother to put together a level of improvements that we're talking about with giant redwoods and authentic stone walls and things like that. It's not just, we're not just doing it, but we're doing it in a way that is really significant, and I think is going to really add to the streetscape and the cityscape here in our community. In addition to that, this development will also raise the standard for green building in the town. We're going to have we're going to shoot for 150 points. Normally, 50 points is normal, and we're going to be significantly higher than that. Lastly, I want to point out that because of the location of this development and the housing type and the housing quality, we're going to we're going to build a housing type that is at a lower price point than we've previously provided in our last two projects. The homes here will sell at a lower price, but they're still going to get incredible quality, and I think that that's significant, and that's exciting to me to be able to provide that kind of housing and quality housing for people. All these things are important, significant, and are good for the town of Los Gatos. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robeson. Any questions for the applicant? Yes.
Oh, Mayor, I want to see the video.
Great. South, looking on Los Gatos Boulevard at Roberts. You can see the stone wall and the landscaping on the right edge. Next, we're going to drive east or west on Roberts Road. And you can see that we're preserving the large oak tree here on Roberts Road. This is at Mitchell. And we're going to drive west on Mitchell. This is a little further down the street, same along Mitchell. These are really good tools. I think they really show and give a good demonstration of what the project is going to look like. And as I said, the way the project looks, feels, and works, I think at the end of the day is probably one of the most significant aspects to any project that is built in the town.
Thank you, Mr. Robeson. Questions for the applicant? We'll start with Councilwoman McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Robeson, at Planning Commission, they had quite a lengthy discussion with you and with themselves regarding the private street and making it not appealing to cut-through traffic and very usable for the families that would be living along there. And in fact, you and I discussed this when we met also. I know that you feel that having the pavers in there will help. Having only right in, right out off of Roberts is going to help. Have you given any more thought to having a more driveway type entrance rather than a street entrance so that it really does appear to look like you're entering a courtyard rather than a through street? And have you given more thought as to the pros and cons of sidewalks in there and whether those are needed or not?
Let me show you a picture that we took from a project off of Monterey here in Los Gatos. We'll get to it in a minute. Right back, right there. And that's the driveway approach that you're talking about. And the answer to that question is yes, we have given thought to it. I've talked to our civil engineer, and that's possible. And that's I think it's a good idea because it's going to tighten up the throat a little bit, reduce traffic speeds as people come in, and I think it's going to make it feel like a driveway, and it's a detail that we are going to add to the project. With respect to sidewalks, I don't think that it's necessary in the development. The city engineer said that at the Planning Commission meeting that he did not think that it was required, and that was before we contemplated this detail. And I think that the combination of those things, the pavers and the details, I don't think that in the experience of your own town engineer, I don't think that it's required. I think it'll work just fine the way it is.
That's all for now. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Robeson. A lot of discussion at the Planning Commission also about density. And then in your presentation, you mentioned reference to historical density, and I'd like you to expand on that a little bit as to how you got to the number you got to.
All right, let me go to the site plan. Right there, back. All right. Well, looking at old aerials, there was 4 homes along here before the dealership demolished those homes and replaced them with an expansion of the dealership. You can see the lot lines here. There's a lot here, there's a lot here, there's one here, and there's one off the page over here. So there's 4 houses across the street. And so we've got 4 buildings facing those 4 buildings, and it's the historic pattern that was there. And that's where we abut single-family homes, and that's why we designed it that way. So again, as I said in my presentation, front door to front door, porch to porch, so that it was consistent with the character. Relative to other sides of the project, each one is different, and that was one of the real challenges with this particular property, because there was 4 sides, and they all had a front door, so to speak, and were very prominent, and so each one we considered separately. Along Los Gatos Boulevard, you've got a big setback here, and this is a busy street. It wouldn't be the most desirable place to live on the site, and it's not the place you'd put your biggest homes. And because of that, we've put a little higher density along this edge to match the character that it's adjacent to. Over here, where we're further away from the boulevard, and we're across from duplexes and a school, we've got a very similar streetscape to what you saw at Bluebird Lane and what you've seen at Bluebird Lane. And you've got deep porches, and you've got recessed garages, which I think is a really nice feature, because you're not going to look at garage doors. You're going to look at front doors and porches, and the garages are recessed. And I think that is really important. As you come along this edge, we're across the street from an automobile repair, and to the degree that we could, we sided onto that. And so that, and again, we put smaller houses here. This is one of our smallest houses, and so is this, and so is this. So we sided the houses, appropriately to where the density, what it was adjacent to, and where it was most compatible. And that's how we came up with the plan that we came up with, along with other features in the neighborhood. It's walkability and so forth. The services that I think the plan that we have is consistent with all of that.
Thanks.
The site plan that we're looking at there, is that the one with the single on-site BMP?
It is, and that BMP is right here, and that's not even our smallest unit. This is our smallest unit right here and right here. So the BMP is right there, and it says BMP.
Okay, thank you. That's all for now.
Thank you. Councilman Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following up on the BMP question that the Vice Mayor just referenced, right now it is your proposal to have one BMP on site and another one off site. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And have you purchased the off-site BMP?
We do own units in town, but I don't know that it'll necessarily be one of those units. What we're proposing is that first, that it be in a location that is there's not a cluster of BMPs, and second, that it be approved by staff.
And you have a place that you think would fit that criteria?
We do.
And then, with regard to the BMP, why would you want to have one off-site and one on-site?
Well, it creates an opportunity, this particular plan that we came up with, when we looked at your inventory. First of all, you didn't have any 4-bedroom BMPs, and you didn't have any BMPs that were approaching 2,000 square feet. So this created an opportunity to provide a unit type on-site that at a moderate price that isn't currently available in town. Second, what we're proposing is the second unit be at a low income level, and the town does not have any low income for sale units, and so there's an opportunity to provide a low income for sale unit, and number one. Number two, if we buy it off-site, it's something that we could do right away, and you could take advantage of low interest rates, which I think is also attractive, and you would bring it to market sooner than you would if we were to build it. And I think that those are all good opportunities and good features with respect to this proposal.
So am I to understand then that if both of the BMP units were on site, the moderate price one would be smaller, and would the second one be a low income?
No, they'd both be moderate priced homes, and typically the below market rate unit would be smaller. Our proposal, though, would be that they would be detached, and we've looked at that, and because the commission asked that question, could we accommodate them on site? And I said to the commission that we could, and we've studied that subsequently, and we can make that work, and it works fine. And the units would be smaller, but would be consistent with some of the smaller homes that we have on site. That they would be 3 bedrooms, as this is 3 bedrooms and this is 3 bedrooms, so it would be fairly consistent.
Right. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Robeson. You will have another 5 minutes at the end to respond to us as a result of our meeting with the rest of the public. Okay. Thank you. Any further words from you at this point?
I'll wait for my opportunity to rebut. Thank you.
Thank you. I remind our public that if you wish to speak to this item or any of the items left on the agenda, fill out one of those buff cards and bring it to our clerk on my left. We have a number of cards to present tonight. The first is Tim Boyd.
Somebody doesn't want to sit back in their bench, I guess. So, good evening, Town Council. Just wanted to disclose that I also have spoken with Mark Robeson. I've emailed with him, and I've met with him. Thank you for meeting with me. I've been working to improve some of the traffic situations neighboring the Bluebird Lane project, and Mark has been a pleasure to deal with, and I talked with him last Thursday, and Saturday morning a crew was out there improving the sidewalk, so I want to thank him publicly for that. The concern I have about this development is not, well, I should say, back up. The concern I have about this is not the development per se. It's just the approval of all this housing that's being approved throughout town, all this development that's being approved by the town council, and with a lack of integration with the schools. The schools are suffering. The schools are overcrowded. The schools are desperate for cash right now. We live in one of the wealthiest places on earth, and our schools are suffering. We get solicited for donations all the time. Everybody's trying to make do with the limited resources we have. With all these projects getting approved, the developer impact fees, from what I found out today, that they're roughly paying approximately $3 per square foot on the development. I don't know if that actually factors into account the basements that are being built in many of these places, but it's great that Mark is willing to contribute $150,000 to this as well if the project gets approved. But I think more needs to be done, and we, as a concerned citizen, we look to you as the town council to make those tough decisions. And when you do approve projects, whether it's this or any other project in town, that you really look at the impact it's going to have on the schools, because there's not going to be 15 kids living in these 22 houses. There's probably going to be more than 30, because it's great that there's going to be lower price points on the houses, but all that means is that more families are going to move to town. They're going to be 3 to 4 bedroom houses. Probably each house is going to have 2 kids, and the schools are already overcrowded. So just ask you as a concerned parent and resident of town that the town council keep that in mind when you're considering whether or not to approve this project and the other projects like it in town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Next speaker is Val King.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry, could I ask if Mr. Boyd is still going to be here, if this would be a good time for the attorney to remind us all of the constraints we have in actually not considering impact on the school on land use decisions?
Well, this might be an appropriate time. I was thinking of it.
I was afraid he was going to leave because he's got little ones there who
well,
might want to go home.
I think we can address that now. Madam Attorney?
Thank you, Mayor and Council and members of the public. With respect to considering school impacts, the town's limited under state law. State legislation that dates back to 1998 adopted Senate Bill 50, which is codified in the government code now, and it's known as the School Facilities Act. As the district's familiar, is that it significantly prohibits and limits the town from consideration of school impacts. The legislature adopted the School Facilities Act and identified a formula for school impact fees direct with the schools as part of their lobbying efforts. So under the government code, we're restricted as a local government to require any additional mitigation for school impacts other than the statutory fee or whatever the developer offers out of their own negotiations with the district. And the state law further restricts the local agencies from using school impact fees as a basis for a denial or consideration of a project or additional mitigation measures.
Does that clarify?
Thank you. I just wanted some explanation of the constraints that we have in our analysis.
All right, thank you. Val King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Val King. I'm the owner of the music store down the street from the proposed site. I've got a long-term lease at that property, so I'll be the one that'll be living with this project for quite some time. I've had a chance to meet with Mr. Robeson and see the project, see the details, and I just wanted to come and vocalize my support for the project. I'm looking forward to having these homes as neighbors to my business and the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Tony Alarcon.
Hello, Council. Tony Alarcon, 229 Johnson Avenue, also father to Gwyneth, Alexander, and Demetra, 11, 9, and 7 years old. All of them have attended Green Hill School. And I wrote down some points. I'm very familiar with the site. I've driven by it probably 1,000 times. I also am a past residential developer. I personally mapped over 1,000 units. The site is currently commercial. Once you change it from commercial to residential, it's gone. You'll never get it back, period. The reason to go residential is for more profit. There's no other reason. The lot size, I believe, is too small. It's not compatible with the existing lot sizes. The average lot size on Johnson Avenue, where I live, is anywhere from 6,500 square feet on a small lot to over 8,000. That's not this site. The video, I might add, does show a loss of ridgeline if you look at it again. The video also does not show any children on the streets. That's because the traffic from the trip count coming in and out of the house and dropping off the students. That's going to be an impact. My children now walk up that street going to Fisher, and other kids do. There's no sidewalks in the development because it's done to maximize the yield of the units in the development. I'd like to know the sizes of the 4 older homes that he quoted. And the garages, once they get filled with stuff, which we all have, they're going to park on the street, which is going to impact the drop-off at the school site. Also, just one last point, the Robinson home, last development in Bluebird Lane, also wanted to move the BMPs off-site. Why? Because of profitability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alarcon. Eileen Braga.
Hi, I'm Eileen Braga. I live on Mitchell Avenue. I have 2 children, one at Fisher and one at Los Gatos High School. We are not in favor of this project as it is presented. We feel it is too dense of a project. The Mitchell Avenue, we have 3 schools affected by that. We have the Green Hills, we have Fisher, and we have Van Meter. A lot of parents come around to Van Meter. The video did not show the parking and the children. I noticed that as well, which was bothersome to me. The floor area ratio ranges from 1 in the 40s to 11 in the mid-70s. When we did our project, we were required to keep the image of the town, the street. They wanted us to stay within our limits and how Mitchell Avenue looked in the neighborhood. We had to stay at 33 far, which this goes over that by quite a bit. Parking for the development is expected to overflow. They talked about that last time. The condos behind us have 56, I believe, spare spaces, and they still park in the street in the surrounding areas across from the schools. We're not only impacted by the schools and various things, but we're impacted by soccer and baseball on the weekends. There is crowding in the streets, so overflow is going to be a problem. It's also my understanding that some of the driveways in this project won't even fit a car in the driveway. They'll come over onto the sidewalk. They are talking about keeping 1 fir tree, but haven't discussed the 19 to 20 that they're cutting down. If anyone has driven into Bluebird, it's a nice development, but it is very tight and hard to navigate within that planned community. And we would like you also to look at the future of, we are in favor of houses there, but it would be nice to put it back into putting retail on the street and then maybe houses in the back, but not as condensed. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a question for you, Ms. Braga. Councilman Inspector would like to ask you a question.
For you.
For you.
Isn't this exciting? And it's going to be easy ones, too. I missed the beginning. Where did you say you live right now?
I live on Mitchell Avenue,
All right.
16942 Mitchell Avenue. It's right on the corner, 1 away from Fisher.
All right. And when you say our project, you talked about our project.
We added a 2nd story to our house, and we were told that we had to stay and keep the neighborhood, I don't know the word for it.
Compatible?
It was used here several times, but it had to match the neighborhood environment. And so we kept it our 33 floor area ratio. It was very important to the Planning Commission and to the Town Council that we kept a ratio of 1-story to 2-story houses on that street. And it was an even split when our house was approved.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Muffin Brown?
Good evening. My name is Muffet Brown. I live at 16345 Los Gatos Boulevard in the townhouses called Villa de Los Gatos, which cover roughly a little bit more than twice the acreage of the proposed development, and we have 52 townhouse units, but quite a bit of open space and a pool, and 29 interior parking spaces available, as well as something like 30 on the Los Gatos Boulevard, Nino Avenue, and Fisher Avenue. At night, most of the time, all our interior spaces are taken There's 3 residents of our complex that cannot even get 1 car in a garage. A couple of those residents are even single people, but and most families don't get 2 in their garage. No, there's 5 families that can't get even 1 in, I believe, and I think our family is one of only 3 that can indeed get 2 cars in the 2-car garage. So I want to be sure that the development does indeed, as I've been assured by Robeson Home staff, have in its CCNRs that residents do have to park in their garage, because the 16 spaces on the exterior of this development are not enough, in my opinion, for 22 homes. I would like to see the development cut by about 10% in density, and also I think I would like to see a sharp notch and no bulb out on the Los Gatos Boulevard side of the Mitchell-Los Gatos Boulevard intersection, so that the bus can stop and just pull directly out, but you could have like 2 or 3 parking spaces on Los Gatos Boulevard for visitors to these homes, or maybe people who might have overflow at night to park out there, because my main concern is parking and traffic, and also that there's very little place for children to play. And I'm quite sure that there will be as many children density-wise as we have. We have 22 Los Gatos Unified School District children in our complex of 52 right now, and we have 3 toddlers, or two and a half, 2 toddlers and 1 baby on the way, and still there are quite a few single people who have lived in our complex for a long time, or rent. But we are townhouses. Our square footage is not as much as these. We don't have, it's not a single family home, so I expect the child density to be higher per unit than our complex. And I think that's all I really wanted to say. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Bridget Garza.
My name is Bridget Garza. We live on the corner of Mitchell and Fisher, and we also own the duplex that is on George Street, directly across from this project. Interesting to see that the home's much like our duplex. We can see he made it fit in, and we are in favor of the project because we feel like right now it's very ugly and it will be a big improvement, but very concerned about the traffic. They mentioned there was no traffic study. I wonder if anybody has been out there at 8:30 a.m. on any Tuesday through Friday. Mitchell Avenue is completely blocked with cars in one direction. It's stop-and-go traffic already. The children have to ride their bicycles on the sidewalk because it's too dangerous for them to ride with the traffic now as it exists. And so we wonder what's going to happen with even more traffic. We have our driveway frequently blocked because people dropping off or picking up children can find no other way to park for Fisher School. So we sometimes have to wait while children come to their parents before we can back out of our driveways. We have to try not to leave at a time when school is going into session or leaving. Also, about the setbacks, I understand these houses will not have the same setbacks that we have on our block. We just wonder, will our block be changed, and will the setbacks that we are required to keep, as Eileen mentioned, that they were required in their house, be changed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Garza.
Mr. Mayor, if I may clarify.
Please.
A traffic study was not required, but one was voluntarily completed by the applicant. Also, the school generation rates have come forward, and the 10 to 15 projected students is the number provided by the school district, and that's in a letter from the school district as part of the Planning Commission packet.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. The next presenter is Carol Witter.
Hi, I'm Carol Witter. I also live at the Villas de Los Gatos Townhouses, 16345 Los Gatos Boulevard, Unit 13. I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and we are also concerned about the traffic. We know that we have a proposal to bring Lexington down to Van Meter, and that will also affect us on the other side. So I'm just here to show my support for more sidewalks, less units, possibly we are not in favor of the project as proposed, and we got the notice in the mail, and this is my first town council meeting, but I just wanted to come and speak to the fact that we would like either less units or to not be granted the rezoning.
Thank you and welcome. Richard Allen.
Good evening. I'm Richard Allen. I live at 172 College Avenue, and I'm a member of the Los Gatos Community Alliance. In the staff report on page 6, talking about traffic, the comparison is made to the former auto repair shop and the auto dealership use, and it concludes that the traffic will generate fewer trips. I submit that this is a misleading and irrelevant criterion. The relevant measure of traffic impact is the number of trips added to the current traffic load. I've driven Los Gatos Boulevard in both morning and evening rush hours, as well as both school peak traffic periods. My observation is that the area impacted by this project is already extremely heavy and can only become intolerable when 22 new homes and probably 44 more cars are added. The traffic study prepared by the applicant and reviewed by the town's traffic consultant concludes that both intersections will continue to operate at acceptable levels of service. This seems strange given my own traffic experiences, and I urge you to do your own personal traffic study by driving the boulevard at these peak times. I might add that the applicant's video simulation in no way represents even the current traffic load, much less after 22 homes and 44 cars are added. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Lee Quintana.
Good evening. Lee Quintana, 5 Palm Avenue. And I'm also a member of the Los Gatos Community Alliance. My comments were going to be relative to the negative declaration, and one of the topics has already been covered partly by Mr. Allen. I also was surprised to see that the traffic analysis that was done was based on the difference between the prior auto dealership and the current proposed residences, while CEQA requires that the analysis be based on the existing traffic. Given that the dealership is empty, that traffic would be all attributed to the residential units. In addition, the traffic, again, deals specifically with the cumulative traffic of near term, or this project's contribution to it. There is no analysis of long-term cumulative traffic, which is an entirely different type of analysis. The same goes for the air quality analysis, although this one I really didn't understand as well. The negative declaration states that the project itself, based on the requirements of the air quality control district, does not meet the level for, to be a significant impact or to require further analysis. And then when it discusses air quality cumulative analysis, it seems that it's using exactly the same data to say that it won't have any long-term cumulative analysis, but project impact and long-term over 20 years are different. Again, the other thing that I was sort of curious about is the general plan designation and zoning. The existing GP is for mixed-use commercial, and the existing zoning is for highway commercial. And the requested PD is to change it to a PD highway commercial. Residential doesn't seem to be in any of that, and it gives a false impression if somebody is to look at the zoning map or at the general plan map as to what is really on the site. When I look at this from a planner's point of view after 15 years of experience, this would have required a general plan amendment and a zoning amendment that would be consistent with residential.
Thank you, Ms.
And my son
McDonald.
also went to Green Hills Nursery School.
Snuck that one in. Staff wish to comment on the last issue related to the zoning.
The CH zone, along with several other of our commercial zones, the C1, the CM, the C2, residential is possible with a use permit. So if you look at the list of conditional uses, residential uses are possible with a use permit. The PD precludes the need for a use permit.
Thank you. Terry McBriarty.
Good evening, Council. My name is Terry McBriarty. I live at 15075 Garden Hill Drive. And my two children, I have two boys. One of them attends Van Meter. I'm here to speak against approval of the project. Today, I was driving down Los Gatos Boulevard to drop my oldest son off at school for the kickoff of Ride Your Bike, Ride Your Scooter, Walk to School Week, and was greeted by the sight of an ambulance. And I was wondering who got hit by a car on the way to school for walk, ride your bike, ride your scooter. Fortunately, it was someone else. It wasn't a little kid. I didn't have to explain to my son that one of his classmates was killed or injured on the way to school. But if the approval gets made tomorrow to bring the 170 Lexington students down and 100 more cars to add to the chaos that is every day driving our children to school, we live far enough away that we don't have the choice to walk or ride our bike or whatever. So the driving there, the traffic is a mess, and to say that no impact is going to be made on traffic that's already a mess, that's already a danger to our children who are trying to cross the street. There's crossing guards there, and someone was already hit. It's not safe, and adding more traffic. You don't have to consider the schools, but you don't have to rezone commercial property either. It's commercial. It was made commercial for a reason. We need commercial areas in town to sell things and do things. We don't need residential property up and down the boulevard. You know, it's been empty for 6 months. Well, find another use for it. We don't need the Honda dealership there. We can find somebody else, do something else, and we certainly don't need that many homes. And it's certainly, I don't know why the school district is saying it would bring 15 children into the town district. That's ridiculous. I don't know anyone who moves to Los Gatos who doesn't move here for the schools. Everyone who has moved to our neighborhood has had 2 children with them going to schools. It would bring, just like everyone says, it would bring 2 children practically for every house. And if it didn't bring that many, I would be surprised. The schools are all overflowing. Van Meter is using every single classroom. We don't have any room. The class sizes are approaching 30. We didn't move to Los Gatos to have overcrowded classrooms and to be raising bonds to build extra classrooms to line developers' pockets. This is ridiculous. It's absurd to be rezoning everything to build extra houses. We can barely deal with the ebb and flow of older people moving out and young families moving in. This is destroying our town, building 90 houses here and there. It's
Thank you, Ms. McBriarty. Gary Metz.
Good evening, Council. My name is Gary Metz. I live at 16898 Mitchell Avenue. I may be right across from the proposed development. I would like to speak in support of a residential project there. In my opinion, the development will enhance the surrounding area over that of a commercial development. I believe it will affect positively safety issues regarding car speed, reduction of non-resident traffic, which I have 2 kids as well. They go to local schools. I get to witness fast-moving traffic pretty much every day. I also believe it will enhance local schools. My wife is an educator. She's also a school guidance counselor. And we believe with the addition of children, which will happen with new houses, that will actually add more families in the area, more resident traffic, again, slowing down local traffic and just giving it more of a community feel than it has right now. And being a property owner, resident of Los Gatos, it's a lovely town, it's a beautiful place to be and raise a family. His proposed development looks very nice, and I believe it will add to the aesthetic qualities of Los Gatos. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Metz. Beverly Bryant.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Beverly Bryant. I live at 16940 Placer Oaks Road in Los Gatos. I've lived there for 17 years, so I've driven the boulevard a lot over the past 2 decades almost. I rise tonight in support of this project. I'm a neighbor to the project. It's on my regular biking route, and I'm very pleased to see that the old Honda dealership will be replaced by homes. As you know, that part of Los Gatos Boulevard is really a transition area. There are condos, of course, next door in the school, and then it goes down with a couple of businesses. But really, you enter into the part of the boulevard which leads to town, which is homes. And this is providing a transition with some smaller homes, not the rather large ones at the other part of the boulevard, but I think it will be good. The homes are attractive. I've really been impressed with the variety that I saw in some of the renderings. And also, I think if you look back to the master plan, you'll find that the recommendations on the homes are in keeping with what the master plan asked for, which is a variety of uses along Los Gatos Boulevard. Also, I think the project will fill a hole in the boulevard. A residential projects are hard to build, they're difficult, and it sounds like there are a lot coming up right now, but we're in a point now where residential projects are going to be built, we hope. And in the future, there may be more commercial projects. I think definitely we should look at this project as one that will stand for a long time. It's in keeping with the neighborhood. A lot of the homes on Mitchell are quite small. They're Victorian homes, and this will be very similar in nature. The green building instrumentation that Mr. Robeson has talked about, I think is very, very impressive at 150 points. Also, the fact that this project will bring 2 affordable homes. One will come online pretty quickly if you permit that, and one that's very, very large as affordable homes go. I think this should be something that should be seen as a very good thing. Also, a freestanding affordable home in Los Gatos is important. Single-family homes near businesses and will encourage walking. I am in a place where I can walk to the stores on the boulevard. The people here will very often will walk to school. These kids won't be driven to school, I doubt, to Fisher, and they will be walking to commercial business on the boulevard. We need to capitalize on this project now. I think it's a good one. I encourage you to consider it carefully and to approve it. I am very pleased to see something like this coming to my part of town. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. The last card I have is for Lauren Kuhn, and I invite anyone else who wishes to speak to this item to turn in one of these buff cards to the clerk at this time. Ms. Kuhn.
Hi, I'm Lauren Keene. I am the director at Green Hills Preschool. My mom, Patty, is the owner and has been so since 1979. And what people may not remember is that the Honda dealership was a busy, bustling place. They had 30 to 40 employees. They had places that they needed to park. They needed to offload the cars that they serviced. As a commercial business, it was hard for us to even find parking. So I don't think parking should be an issue when people are considering this as far as density and what it will interrupt with the flow of traffic. We are also in support of it being a residential space. It's up to you guys to decide the density part. That is not my forte, but we really feel like it needs to be a residential space. We like the way that it matches with the surrounding area. We feel that we can work well with Mr. Robeson. He's very open with us. when we have concerns, and has been so from the planning on. We just want to say that we are in support of it, and the congestion that parents are finding is due to driving their children to school. And we realize that a lot of neighborhoods are driving to Fisher and to Van Meter, but that really doesn't have any impact on what should be built nearby. It's about how kids are getting to school, and that seems like an unrelated issue to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keene. We have one more card, Glenn Lyles. And again, if anyone else wants to turn a card in, please feel free to do so at this time.
My name is Glenn Lyles. I live a block away from the intersection, 16700 Shannon Road on the corner of Roby. So this intersection is about a block away from our house. We've lived in Los Gatos for 35 years. When we first moved there, there was horses coming down our street. You wouldn't even think about that in this day and age. It's got to be, in 35 years, the worst intersection in this town, bar none. And you could come up with statistics on it meets certain things. The Honda dealers had so many mechanics, et cetera. And this shoe just does not fit this site. And also on your map up there, you don't show the 11 houses on the opposite corner that also has been approved. And so what I almost beg you to do is stop, do a traffic study that encompasses both this project and the one where the furniture store is. It's the only thing that you can even think about. There's the Los Gatos food store that comes out that driveway. There's going to be another driveway coming across from the 11 house site. And so it's going to be a very busy intersection, and we see a lot of kids trying to cross that street. So my suggestion is you take a look at both of these sites and then come up with a better traffic plan, if there is one, with this number of houses. Thank you.
Mr. Lyles, for your clarification, the proposal that you reference at Shannon Boulevard has been withdrawn. Was never approved, and it's been withdrawn, the 11-house proposal.
Okay, that project has not been approved?
No.
So it was turned down?
No, it was withdrawn by the applicant.
Okay.
Two more cards. Anna Leon? You'll correct it for me, I know.
Thank you. Good evening, Town Mayor and council
Ms.
members.
Leon, would you bring that mic down? Yes,
sorry.
thank you.
I lived across the Honda dealership, 16203 George Street. I went from Mrs. Garza. I like to see the development. It's very great. Like she's saying that that empty slot is ugly. I'm not agreeing to the density of the homes, 22. If we drive by, we already see the model kind of built, and my son is asking me, how come this house is so small? So that's one of the question my kids also go to Van Meter, and pretty soon is going to Fisher. In the morning, kids are riding across the street, bikes walk through Los Gatos Boulevard and then onto Roberts into Fisher. And traffic, it's always bad. Parents dropping off kids, we are going to work. 22 house with 44 cars, it's going to be very hot traffic jam, and there's no crossing guard between Roberts and George or Los Gatos Boulevard. It's not until closer to Fisher, so it's dangerous for the kids. The other thing is, on our side of the street, we have only 3 houses, you can say, but now the proposing is like 7 houses across the street. I welcome that idea, is so now my kids have more friends to play with, but again, the school is overcrowded. Right now, we are already not having a multi-purpose room that we have to turn it into a classroom. So with that many students, I don't know how the school is going to fit all these kids and get a quality education. I moved to Los Gatos because of the school, and now it's probably, I mean, I shouldn't threaten and saying that other school district neighboring had higher score than Van Meter. So that's a pitfall for Los Gatos if people are now looking into other areas to rent or live. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leong. Julia Yamamoto. This will be the last one unless I see someone else running up here with a card.
Good evening. My name is Julia Yamamoto, and I live at 16941 Mitchell Avenue, and I'm in favor of the residential housing going into that space. I've seen the work that Mr. Robeson does. I think it's quite nice. However, we'd like to see the proposed plan less dense, include more parking. I would like to see a sidewalk put in the interior of the plan. And if we're going to go back to the historic pattern of the neighborhood, I'd like to go back to the historic lot size as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Yamamoto. All right, this is it. Any more? I knew it. You have to give it to the clerk, actually. Give it to the clerk. I'll let you speak. While she's logging you in, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Dion Campisi.
You can lift it up.
And I live on Roberts Road. I'm about 80 yards from the project, so I know it well. But I'm in support of this project. This thing needs to happen. And currently right now it's an eyesore. I drive by it 4 or 5 times a day. And we need this construction to start. This is an older building. It's not going to get re-tenanted anytime soon. I'm in the commercial real estate business, so I know how hard it is to lease property right now. Secondly, we need less commercial space. By my house, we've got lots of commercial space. We've got too much commercial space. We don't have we don't have enough nice resident homes. Last year, since it is October, I'll mention last year during Halloween, we had 1 trick-or-treater. That's not a lot. We've got to get more family residences, more single-family homes built. This is going to help the school. It's going to improve the neighborhood. And overall, we need to see this project get built. So I'm in favor of it, and I hope you guys are too. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Campisi. I think that's it. So we'll call the applicant back up. You have 5 minutes to comment on anything you've heard from our public.
Thank you, Mayor Pruszynski. The first item I'd like to talk about is traffic. I lived down the street from this property for 6 years, right on Roberts Road, around the school, and it was a development that I built. I'm familiar with these arguments. During that 6 years, I never had any issues getting in and out of my development during school hours. Most people who live there recognize when school's in session, and for that 20 minutes that it happens, you work around that. In this particular development, as somebody said, no one who lives here is going to drive to school. They're going to walk to school. This is the lowest possible generator of traffic that you could possibly have. I mean, it's retail traffic, a retail building, and for the Planning Commission, staff did a study, and retail would generate 10 times as much traffic as a residential use, and office would generate twice as much traffic as a residential use. I think that someone talked about the traffic study. One of the things the traffic study also looked at was the property in a vacant condition, not with the service bays operating, 0 basis. And the level of service of those intersections did not change. They did not give us credit for any traffic that was being generated there, and that's not normal in my experience. You would typically look at what was on the site previously. They're comparing a vacant eyesore to a housing development. It's yes, so there will be some traffic. I don't think that, and that's in the traffic report, but because of the location, I think the traffic condition here is going to be the absolute best it could be. Someone talked about garages. In all of our projects, we stay on the board of those projects. And in fact, John Garcia, who's worked for me for the last 20 years, he's here in the audience tonight. He and Jake Lavin, who's also here tonight, stay on the board, as I do, to ensure that the project works well. And what does that have to do with garages? We make sure that the people park in their garages, and that those spaces are not used for storage. That's first and foremost. And then from a practical standpoint, the homes that don't have garage aprons, the few that don't, have attics, and they have enlarged garages. So that from a practical perspective, we're providing more storage for those homes, so that people have a place to store. And in the attic has a 5-foot head clearance and a stair to it, so you have easy access to it, so people can get up and down and put their stuff away, so that the garages are available for parking. Relative to the unit, to the parking count, we have four parking spaces for every unit. We have more than adequate parking. As a comparison, at Bella Vista, we had 3.6 parking spaces per unit, so we have more parking here than they did there. And in addition to that, we have long driveway aprons on the homes with detached garages, so there's even more opportunities for parking around the site. Relative to density, as one of the speakers mentioned, across the street on the George side, there's a duplex and there's a school. That's an institutional use. We've maintained the number of parking spaces that are there now will remain there when we're finished. And in fact, we've agreed to take out the redwood tree on the other side of the street that will allow us to add 2 more parking spaces out there. In addition to that, by making the change to the driveway over on Mitchell that we talked about earlier, I think we'll be able to add an additional parking space there. So with with some of the things that aren't even in the staff report, there's going to be more parking out here than there is now. Going back to the density, as I said, you've got an institutional use across the street. One of the speakers who lives the 80 yards away from this project on Roberts Road, that's a 20 to the unit condominium project. We've got automobile use across the street. I think the density for this project is appropriate, particularly in light of the surroundings and the excellent walkability that this site has to neighborhood services, including the schools. I don't know if I've missed anything. If you've got questions about something that's been raised, I'm available to answer questions, and our traffic engineer is here tonight as well if you'd like to ask him questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Robeson. Questions from council for Mr. Robeson? Mr. Leonardis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if you ever considered, there's been a lot of questions about density, and I think people's concerns come from the fact that these are single-family homes that are dense, as opposed to maybe you can have 30 or so townhomes, or someone mentioned, 55 townhomes in a development twice as large. But I was thinking, why didn't you pursue a townhome or a senior housing project, considering, to me, when you look at the transition from the garages, you have kind of an automotive synergy here. You have Acura, you have A&M Auto Parts, then you have that new office building, then you have Autobahn garages, then you have what used to be, of course, the Honda dealership. You have this synergy here. Why not put more density there, but a different use of properties that might generate less traffic and those types of things?
Well, we came into CDAC at a higher density because of in part because of the town housing element that suggested a higher density. In addition to the location, you're on a busy street, got excellent walkability, and we came in with over 40 units and a mixed-use component. We presented that to CDAC. CDAC was not supportive of that, and it was also, as I said, a mixed use. That would generate more traffic. We came back to CDAC with a revised plan of 24 homes, and there was still a mixed-use component. That was ultimately altered to the 22 units that we're presenting tonight, but the second time and passed through the CDAC committee, it was, they said that the density was appropriate for the site, and we have pursued that. One of the things I'd like to talk about just for a second relative to density is, I'm hearing people talk about density, but and I'm hearing people talk about the video that we showed, and it didn't show the number of cars that would be out there, and it didn't show kids. But I haven't heard anybody, and the story polls that are out there. And in fact, one speaker said that their son asked them, "Why are they so small?" Interesting question. When you think about density, what do you think about? I think about height, and I think about side yard setback, particularly the second story setback. And in these and as I mentioned in my presentation, the scale of these homes is much lower, and so I think the effective density is going to be completely different. These are very small homes, and they're not going to feel dense. In my experience as a builder, for the past 22 years, the two most important aspects to whether a project feels dense, or the three, are first the height of the buildings. Second, the second story setback, and we've got excellent two-story setbacks. We've got, in some places, as much as 18 feet. Along the boulevard, I think our two-story setback is over 15 feet, which is an excellent setback. And our setbacks along George, for example, are 13 or 14 feet between the homes, which is even greater than the distance we have between the homes at Bluebird Lane. And so we've got excellent setbacks. The other thing and the last that is important to density and the way it looks and feels is the articulation, the quality of the project. At the end of the day, that's a huge part of it. Is the quality of the materials and the quality of the design and how it's implemented. And I think that the way this is going to be implemented, I think it's going to work very, very well. We've worked very hard to get the height of these homes down and make sure that we can get the setbacks where we think that they belong. We're going to continue to work on the project and refine this project like we have every other project in this town. I mean, your staff affectionately refers to us as Robeson Homes and Remodeling, because we're constantly updating and improving our plans, and we've got ways to improve the setbacks even further by reducing the size of some of these homes, and we're going to continue to do that and work through that through the ANS process of this project. So I think that I don't think that density is going to be an issue. And as I think back to the Planning Commission hearing, and there was a speaker who lived across the street from Bluebird Lane, Paul Descharme, and the commission had talked about density, and he came up to the mic and said, density. He said, I don't really understand this density subject. When I look out across the street, I see neighbors, I see porches, and I see the removal of I saw the removal of a blight. And this is going to be such an improvement to that neighborhood, and so significant. And this is a project that we did just up the street and finished recently. And these homes will be lower and will have better setbacks between them. I think this project is going to work very, very well from a density standpoint.
Other questions for Mr. Robeson? Ms. McNutt?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Robeson, by any chance, is your traffic consultant here with you tonight?
He is.
I wonder if, I'm assuming that you would prefer to have him answer this question because it relates to the traffic study.
Okay.
Yes, hi, I'm Gary Black with Hexagon Transportation Consultants.
I think we've seen you here before on other things. Yes,
yes you have.
So we had a comment about the CEQA and the traffic analysis and this idea of existing traffic. And I wondered if you could clarify that, because it seems nonsensical to me. I mean, I appreciate that you included no use at all there right now, but it's nonsensical to me to say we're going to compare a closed store or an empty house traffic, which of course is going to be zero, to any kind of use at all. So don't you usually look at comparing what it's permitted to use currently and then what the new use would be? or not? I mean, you
Well,
explain.
yes, traditionally the town has looked at the permitted use and what the existing buildings will allow in order to determine whether a traffic study is necessary, and then also to assess the traffic impact fees that the town typically assesses. But as you probably know, in the last, just at the end of last year, there was a court decision that affected the CEQA analysis that we do for new development that dictated that we look at a situation where we look at what's on the ground today as a baseline. So what most jurisdictions are doing, and Los Gatos included, is to kind of look at both. So what would it be like if we said what's there today is nothing, so let's look at that, and then what did it used to be, and let's look at that. So we looked at both of those scenarios.
Okay, and again, and the result was the
Well,
same in all cases? That
Yeah, the result was that, yes, what we call the intersection levels of service, or the traffic volume on the street network, is not very much affected either way.
Okay.
Thank you. Other questions? We'll stay there for a second.
Okay.
Any other questions for the traffic engineer? Just a point of clarification, when you say that the level of service, which is B and C, I believe, at that intersection,
Yes.
that doesn't mean B is 2 cars and C is 3 cars. It's a different relative matrix. Would you talk about that for a second?
Well, what those levels refer to, they're related to the delay that cars experience in getting through the intersection. So it doesn't directly relate to the volume, but a typical intersection like that, I didn't look up the actual numbers, but probably has around 1,000 to 1,200 cars an hour that are going through that intersection. And so if you add 50 cars, it's not going to be noticeable. Just to put things in perspective a little bit, in order to actually move the needle and go from, say, B to C or C to D, you typically need to add 100, 200 cars in an hour, something like that. And so this project doesn't come anywhere near that. Either did the auto dealership when it was there. So they just don't generate that much traffic enough to move the needle at an intersection compared to all the other traffic that's already out there.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Robeson, would you return, please, for a second?
The last thing I'd like to comment on is, as one of the speakers mentioned, at the Planning Commission, we volunteered to commit an additional $150,000 to the schools. And we did that because we recognized that there'll be an impact, and we wanted to make sure that that we paid to help mitigate the impact of the that we would have. I also want to note that the school district also came to the Swanson Ford project hearing and asked for some help. And to my knowledge, no one else has stepped forward to offer assistance to the school district relative to the impact. And I think that this sort of sets a good precedent relative to being involved in the community. I live here, I work here, and I want the project to work. And when I build something in Los Gatos, it's important to me that it turn out the way I want it to, and not just look good, but I want it to function well. And as one of the speakers also mentioned, that we were out replacing a sidewalk this weekend. I want to make sure that the schools work. That's an important part of our of the community, and it's important to us, and I'm going to continue to work with them through the process, and I think that that's an important point.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, then we're going to close the public hearing. Thank you. And open it to council for discussion, comment, or a motion. I would like to say just a couple of things in preface. To preface my orientation for this particular application. First of all, I want to commend the Planning Commission on its deliberation. I thought that it was an arduous and very informative discussion, and the end result was a 3-3 split on the vote, basically saying the Planning Commission offers the Council numerous opinions regarding the project, both pro and con, but it was not really able to come to a conclusion that they could agree to in relationship to all the various aspects of the project as has been noted tonight. But the feeling I had when I read the verbatim minutes was that the Planning Commission did due diligence in exploring every aspect of this application, and there was a good deal of support, almost unanimous support for the project in various components. The motion, the eventual motion, as I recall it, was that this would move to council with a recommendation for a residential-only development, and that the below-market units would be both sited on the property. I think that was a 5-1 vote. The message to me as a council member is that the commission feels that residential is the appropriate use. And in the context of the general plan, the revised general plan and the boulevard plan, if you read those plans carefully, you note that, as was pointed out earlier in the evening, the boulevard plan calls for commercial on the north side. As you come down the boulevard, that commercial mixes with office and eventually retail, office, and residential until you get to Roberts or Shannon and the boulevard, at which point there is a transition that needs to take place, and that is to residential. And I think it's been pointed out by a number of people in tonight's discussion that the transition that this offers is an important transition. That the boulevard really is designed to be a gradation of uses. So the argument that we need more retail space, particularly when it's linked with the increase in traffic generated by residential, and does not conform with the general plan or the boulevard plan. The intent of the reduction of commercial at that end of the boulevard is so that we can have the transition to the residential neighborhood that commences at that point. I am very comfortable as I look at this project, very comfortable with its residential character, and also I think that the case has been made that as you look at the amendments that are taking place along the boulevard, there are other spaces that need to be occupied by commercial that are further north. There are spaces that opened up when the auto dealership process changed, not only in the downturn in the economy, but even prior to that, where everything was moving out to the auto malls. Someone mentioned, obviously, Los Gatos would be antithetical to an auto mall in the standard sense, so it's never going to happen. And so we have some new spaces that have opened up, not really of our choice, up the boulevard that would call out for different uses. Most of them are going to be retail uses, and we will be able to accommodate the retail need. But if we stay with the boulevard plan and we stay with the general plan, then indeed the use here is appropriate, and the proposal of the ordinance for that purpose, I think, mirrors what the general plan calls for. That's by way of general comment. Other comments from council for purposes of clarification? Madam McNutt?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not quite ready to do a motion yet. There were two issues that I would like to get council's discussion on before we take the next step, whatever that might be. And I'll define what those are and where I am on those. One is the idea of the sidewalks on the interior street, and just to clarify, my understanding is that there are sidewalks all around the perimeter of the project on all the blocks. It's on this courtyard type street where it's a question. And I think on that, where I'm at right now, and I'm eager to hear from other council members, is that as much as that private street can be visually cued as I keep calling the word courtyard, a driveway entrance into a private neighborhood, I think it will discourage any sense of cut-through traffic. The only cars, and also it doesn't make any sense just from a logical point of view of why you would cut through there, just like I would never cut through the townhome project down by Van Meter to, I don't know why I never thought of that, maybe I should try it sometime, but to circumvent some of the Van Meter Fisher traffic. And so the only cars entering that site would be the homeowners and their guests, and one would assume that they would be safety conscious because it's their own children and neighbors that would be playing there. So again, I'd like to hear from council, but right now I'm thinking that as long as that can be framed aesthetically and in construction as a courtyard, it would not need the sidewalks, and it would allow that whole area to become an outdoor play area for the families there. The other is the BMP, and I'm kind of halfway on both of this. I'm intrigued with the idea of having a 4-bedroom unit available for one of our families at below market prices. I'm also intrigued with the idea of having a for-sale unit for low income, which we do not have. And if it can be located in an area of town where there's not already a cluster of affordable housing, and it can be done immediately, it seems to me that those two actions forward the real goals of our affordable housing policy, which is to make available as many different kinds of units to our families and individuals who are very low, which never happens, low and moderate incomes. If they stay on site, which I know Mr. Robeson said he could do, it would increase the density to 23. And my concern is, although I know he does pay attention to detail, we've seen that in his other projects, they would be the 2 homes over on Roberts, and I'm afraid that even with his attention to detail, their size and location and just positioning would make them feel like stepchildren of the neighborhood. And again, one reason that we talk about having our affordable housing integrated into each project is so that the families who live there feel like they are full-fledged members of the neighborhood, and not when you drive by you say, oh, that one must be the affordable unit. You should never be able to tell that. So again, I'm intrigued with the idea of one off-site, but I'm not 100% wedded to it. So council discussion would be very helpful for me.
All right, we have 2 questions that Councilwoman McNutt raised. One is the issue of sidewalks, and the other is the question of the below-market housing. Any council member wish to weigh in on either of those, Vice Mayor?
I will, and I'll probably throw in a third question for the rest of the council at the same time, and if I may, I'll give a couple of comments on some of the thinking that's going on with me. First of all, with regard to the sidewalks on the interior, I'm very comfortable as long as it's, I'll call it driveway-like, I won't even say courtyard, driveway-like, to not have it. I can't come up with a reason why anybody would cut through there to get through. You've got George Street right on the other side. If you're on Mitchell and you want to get to Roberts Road, that's the logical way to do it, rather than going through an interior of a planned development such as this. With regards to the BMP units, I've not been in favor of off-siting BMP units. However, in this case, we're getting 2 types of BMP units that we don't currently have in the town's inventory, and I think that would sway me to be open to the one on-site and one off-site. Getting a 4-bedroom moderate income, I believe it is, unit in the development that would really be indistinguishable from the rest of the houses is a great idea. And a low-income for-sale unit, as Councilmember McNutt mentioned, is a type we don't have as well. And if it's off-site, as long as it's not in an area that's clustering with other BMP units, and I think that'll come through the process, I'm open to that. To reflect on a couple of things that both came out in the hearing, as well as the other issue that I'd like to hear the rest of the council weigh in on. This to me is, and the studies show, the traffic studies show, is the lowest potential use traffic generator for this project, for this property. Traffic came up a number of times, and certainly, whether it's 22 homes or some other number, it's going to be more than what is there today, which is 0. But the permitted use, gosh, wouldn't it be great if another car dealer wanted to go in there and sell a lot of cars and generate a lot of tax revenue, but I don't think that's going to happen as car dealers consolidate into the auto row areas. So compared to what was there, what could be there, this is a very low traffic generator, and I would venture to guess a 0 traffic generator for the local schools. Putting this kind of housing close to schools, I think it would take longer to get into your car and drive to the local school as opposed to walking your child down the street. So that, I think that's an advantage. The pedestrian scale of this property is very attractive to me. This is a type of housing that we don't have in town. Detached, single family, relatively small, for Los Gatos, affordable. And that brings to the question of, that I'd like to hear the other council members weigh in on, of the density. In order to get the price point that we're talking about, and in order to be a full-service community, which is what our general plan specifies, and to have what we call affordable housing in Los Gatos, we're going to end up with more density than, quarter-acre lots or even 10,000 or 12,000 square feet lots, or even 8,000 square feet lots. So it's a trade-off, density versus price point. And I currently come down on the side of, I like the idea of getting a housing type that we don't have close to schools. Yes, it's going to be a traffic generator for schools population, but we're basically prohibited from taking that into account. And I feel bad for that, because I would like to have a conversation about that at this level, but we can't. And I do appreciate, and I think the schools would appreciate what Mr. Robeson is doing. At least that's what they said at the Planning Commission, of the $150,000 contribution. So I would like to hear that from the rest of the council on the density versus price point, in addition to Councilmember McNutt's questions. Thank you.
Okay, so if I'm tracking this right, we've got a question of the sidewalk. We have a question of the on-site BMP versus on-site, off-site BMP. We also then have the issue of density. And did I miss anything, Ms. McNutt? Any other member of council wish to comment on those, and then any other things that are on your minds right now? Council Member Leonardis?
Just have a couple questions for staff. Going back to this idea of the economic opportunity we're leaving here. 2 weeks ago, we spent a whole lot of time deliberating about whether a downtown business should have 450 square foot of retail or 520 square foot of retail. And here, we're giving up 2 acres of a retail site. Maybe it's no longer, usable for a car selling function, although I can name, 10 different brands that might go in there, including motorcycles and other things. I guess what I'm most concerned of is, we sold cars there for 50 years. We had employees working there. We all know that sales taxes are important to keep our local economy going here. And housing is more of a cost for us because we have to provide services, PPW, library, police, and such. You get the initial bump on the property taxes, but if the property were redeveloped as a commercial site, we would get the property tax bump there and development fees as well. So I'm just having difficulty blindly saying housing is okay here, despite the fact that I know it'll be a lower price point. I thought about this a lot. Strategically, it's located very well for the schools. Mr. Robeson's projects have all been runaway successes. He's very conscientious. You know, he goes above and beyond the call, and his presentation was first class. He puts up the story polls. He does the computer simulations. He's definitely using the public process to notify the community. But I'm just wanted to get some comments from staff about, you know, what are the economic ramifications? What was the sales tax that we were getting from Honda in an average year? And then maybe something about the employees. How many jobs in town did that site provide? Thank you.
Please, Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Leonardis, we cannot divulge without the business owner's permission the specific sales tax generated by any business in town. However, the rule of thumb pre-recession was that auto lots in general on average generated about $500,000 per in vehicle license and sales tax. With the 2008 recession, that dropped precipitously for most average auto dealers across the state. For Los Gatos, we've seen a steady decline of auto dealerships over the last 5 years up and down the boulevard, but are fortunate that both Los Gatos Luxury Cars and their 3 or 4 brands that they offer, as well as more, have continued, and Acura have continued to operate in town. Staff does not believe an auto lot returning to the Honda site is viable in the foreseeable future. We are also following the guidance, not explicit, well, near explicit, but not absolute direction of general plan and prior policies that favors residential either south of Boulevard, south of Shannon, south of Roberts. There's been different points. And we think we are providing ample commercial opportunity north of at the boulevard, on the boulevard at Blossom Hill and further north, as well as in our downtown core. Last, as has been indicated by the traffic engineer, we believe that the residential use has the lowest potential traffic impact near the 2 adjacent school sites.
Just to comment on a couple other aspects that the other council members commented on. If there were a courtyard feel, assuming that this gets approved this evening, I don't see any need to put a sidewalk through there, although I am concerned with the amount of contents of garages pouring out. I know that as you drive through neighborhoods, people have their golf and their skis and their toys in their garage, and a lot of times the cars and toys pile out into the street and into the sidewalks and the driveways and things. But I think if you do make it like the property on Monterey Avenue, more of a driveway entrance, that would help. You know, I don't have too much opinion on the BMPs being moved off-site. It is a policy. It goes directly against our policy. But as far as this particular project is concerned, I'm more troubled with the lost economic opportunity and the sales tax being lost long-term than anything else. So just to weigh in, because my other council members asked me to, I wanted to weigh in on those 2 points.
Thank you, Mr. Leonardis. Other comments? I'll comment on the issues that are on the table. The sidewalks, I think if it's done appropriately, that it can actually minimize the feel of a through street. And we have a lot of streets in our community that don't have sidewalks, that have rolled curbs and move right up to the front yards. One of the major issues for the folks over in Blossom Manor, when there was some consideration of annexation in some places there, was that we would, as the town, would come in and force curb, gutter, and sidewalk. And we had to assure those individuals that that wasn't the intent. The street that I live adjacent to, Filmer, has no sidewalks. It has more of a country feel. And I think the fact that we assume curb, gutter, and sidewalk is not necessarily generally what we actually see in our town. So that's my comment on the sidewalk issue. I think it's not, someone made the comment that the reason why we wouldn't put sidewalks in would be to maximize the yield. And the focus on that comment was primarily driven by a profit motive, or at least that was the intention. My assumption is that what I hear being stated is that if we don't make this lane look like a normal town street, then we would have the opportunity to minimize the traffic. I think we do see the width of the street does the same thing, and I appreciate the fact that there's an addition of parking on that street on the interior. But I think that would be my lane, away from the sidewalk and towards the proposal for no sidewalks on that lane. As far as the BMP issue goes, the reason for our rules relative to BMP being on site was because we were finding developers once upon a time more than interested in paying into our below market housing fund, but not delivering any product. And when it became apparent that the fund was growing, but the units were not, then it became significant for the town to act accordingly, and therefore exact the rule that says that with properties beyond 7 or 8 or whatever the number is, that they must be on site. But it really is intention to build those units rather than just buy those units for someone else to build. And although I believe that it could go either way, and I think that Robeson developers would do a very good job of creating 2 on-site smaller units, I am curious about and attracted to the question of a larger, a 4-bedroom unit that would be somewhat unusual, because as I look through some of our developments that have below market units, most of them are same size as the rest of the houses on the block. However, they have 2 entrances, and that's really the only way you can tell the difference, is that it's actually a duet. And that has been kind of a standard, but again, the intention is that they be invisible in the neighborhood, that they be similar to the rest of the homes in the neighborhood. That might be an issue if we have both units on site. However, if we were to go off-site, I do think there's an advantage, and I think the council has within its power the opportunity to make those kind of judgments in this case. I do believe that the issue of traffic and pedestrian congestion on the boulevard is very, very real. I live on the boulevard. I notice it every day. I know when I have to leave my driveway. I know that if I accidentally drive away during the high traffic times for the schools, then I question my judgment and wisdom, and sit in traffic waiting for this to clear. But the thing that I do know is that by 8:10, it's clear. So if I'm on the street before 10 to 8 and I'm off the street, or I'm on the street rather after 10 after 8, I'm pretty well clear. And it's just one of those issues that we see in that neighborhood where we have multiple schools. I would say this, it's really a shame that we, as a community, lost Berry School up on Oka Road. That's really the issue. That changed the entire dynamic. And I believe this was like the early 80s. And if you can believe, there was a school that is now the JCC, a wonderful establishment, but that was the North Los Gatos School. And I believe the price point for that was $5 million. And that occurrence in which the school site was sold, not leased, but was sold, eliminated that school and totally changed the traffic flow that we experience at Van Meter, at Fisher today. And that was where the bad planning was. And if you consider the fact that all that traffic that's up there on the north side has to come down the boulevard or down Winchester or down University to get to the schools, that would not be the case. We wouldn't be having this discussion. But that is the case. This is the hand we were dealt. And as far as I'm concerned, we have to do what we can to mitigate the issue, but be cognizant of the fact that there are some things that we're just going to have to make adjustments to. And one of those is the question of when traffic is impassable at the schools, and realize that it's a situational issue. It has a time constraint. It can be avoided by people who understand what's going on. I've been taking it upon myself to stand out on the Boulevard of Kennedy just to watch the flow of traffic and the flow of kids and parents a couple of mornings in the last couple of weeks because of the request of neighbors. And it's really obvious that there is a pedestrian traffic issue. And I know the schools are now beginning to address it. I saw the principal of Van Meter out there doing a little bit of surveying for safe routes to school. I know that our own traffic engineers have been out there with the police department and with Mr. Robeson to look at that intersection of Caldwell and the Boulevard. The same thing should be taking place at all of those intersections around this project. But I do believe that the traffic that is generated by this project will not impact the school traffic. And those are the people coming from a little further away that are going to queue up to bring their kids and drop them off. I'm really encouraged with the amount of foot and bicycle and skateboard traffic that we're seeing in the morning. It seems to be increasing exponentially. The kids are getting the idea that they can be a little green too, and I think it's a good thing. I had asked the principal whether it's every day was bring your dog to school day too, because the parents were going with the kids, the dogs are going with the kids. There's a lot of traffic out there, but there's a lot of interaction, and it feels like family. And so I think that, there's some issues we have to deal with. We need to tackle them. We need to tackle them in a joint effort of town and school. And I hope we will do that in the very near future. That is my intention, and I believe we're going to have the beginnings of a dialogue in that regard because I've requested that. But for this project, I don't see an issue with density because the houses are smaller houses, the lot sizes are larger in comparison to the houses, and I think that comment made by the neighbor over on Caldwell was significant. When I think of density, I look across the street and I see porches, I see people on their lawn, I see neighbors, and that's really, I think, how we need to approach the way we do this kind of development. We're creating a neighborhood. And I think if we do that, it's a good thing. And so my thought is, I think this is headed in the right direction. I think the developer has done so many good things to make this the right project for this time. And if there is a motion to move this forward, I believe I would be in favor. Other comments? Madam McNutt?
Well, if we have all of the council input, then I would be willing to go ahead and make a motion if you want me to.
Well, before we do that,
yes.
If you are indeed going to move for approval, then we have to read the PD ordinance. Ask the clerk to do so.
Ordinance of the Town of Los Gatos amending the town code affecting a zone change from CH to CHPD for property located at 16213 Los Gatos Boulevard.
And then I'd ask the council for a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to waive the reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, Madam McNutt.
Okay, so just, we have a series of motions that staff has outlined, but before I get into those, I just want to say I am 110% comfortable with this site being housing. The auto dealers are not going to come back. I've learned way too much about the auto dealer business. It's a wacky business, and their business model has changed, and it's just, I've been dealing with this for the last 9 years. It's not going to happen. We can dream about it, but it's not going to happen. We have many commercial and retail opportunities in the town, and we have, in the visioning that was done in the Boulevard Plan over 10 years ago, and the visioning that we did in the general plan update last year, we clearly set out the idea of Boulevard becoming residential as you move south. The general plan specifically says the parcels south of Roberts Road will be residential. And if you look at the renderings that Mr. Robeson provided and the video and that wonderful median, I do want to thank him for coming up with the idea of that median, which I think is going to make a world of difference in terms of defining this area of Los Gatos Boulevard as take a breath, you've left commercial, you're now entering a beautiful residential area as you move down the boulevard towards Main Street. It's absolutely the way to go. And to be putting, or to think about putting commercial in there and the resulting traffic and chaos and noise, remember the complaints that the neighbors had with noise and garbage issue, I mean, it was on and on. We don't need to be doing that in this area. This needs to be home. So given that, I am very comfortable with what I heard from council regarding the private street, the sidewalk, the courtyard feel, the off-site BMP, and so that's what will be included in my motion as we get down to that part. But as staff outlined, the first motion would be to note that the Planning Commission reviewed this and did not make a formal motion, but they had a lot of comments on this application, reached some consensus on major points, and that we do need to move to accept those meeting minutes transcription and accept these minutes as the Planning Commission recommendations.
All right, there's a motion to accept the Planning Commission's recommendations in form of their minutes. That would be attachment 6. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Yes, Councilmember Leonardis.
You know, some of the comments from the Planning Commission did focus on mixed use, transition from retail to housing, density, more open space in planned developments and things like that. I guess where I'm going with this is, unlike Councilmember McNutt, I feel that this property has future economic opportunity if it were to remain commercial. I know this has been in process for a couple of years, and there's no doubt about the merits of the project, and I think the person who, the applicant, is going to do a fantastic job bringing it to fruition the way it was presented this evening. But for myself, I just think a neighborhood serving retail or something to that effect would be much better for the future of Los Gatos. I feel like, you know, as far as the auto row or coming back or leaving or whatever, I do most of my shopping on the internet. When I look for a car, I know that if I were going to buy a Jaguar or Ferrari or, you know, Honda, you know, ATV or something, I'd rather drive to Los Gatos than drive to Gilroy or Milpitas or somewhere else. So for me, there's that possibility of future potential to keep it as it is. But there's also the possibility that if it were true that this were not suitable for automotive, it kind of went right into escrow right when Honda left, and there was no other opportunity given to this property for any type of commercial development. So I guess what I'm getting at is, you know, aspects of the motion I may support, but I don't support rezoning this property for housing because of the economic impact of it will have on the future of Los Gatos and our sales tax revenue.
And Mr. Mayor, I want to clarify that the motion on the table is just for acceptance of the Planning Commission report right now.
That's understood.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments about this motion? I'm going to call the question then. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1 with Councilmember Leonardis in opposition.
The second motion, I've reviewed, as we all have, the mitigated negative declaration. They found that there are no significant impacts, so I will move to adopt the mitigated negative declaration, which is Exhibit 2 of Attachment 4, and the mitigation monitoring plan in Attachment 1.
Is there a second?
I'll second that as well.
Okay, the Vice Mayor seconds. Councilwoman Spector.
Yeah, this part of the motion I will be opposing. The mitigated negative declaration, amongst other things, accepts the 22 units on this 1.9 acres. However, in making and accepting that, it also notes that the neighboring properties have 5 to 6 units per acre, whereas this one will have 11.6 units per acre. As I will explain as we move through our motions, density in this project is an issue for me. But for those limited reasons, I will not be supporting this motion on the mitigated negative declaration.
All right, thank you, Ms. Spector. Any other comments about this particular motion? Seeing none, then I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that motion passes 3-2 with Councilwoman Spector and Councilmember Leonardis in opposition. Please.
And then motion number 3 is because the project is in compliance with the Boulevard Plan and the General Plan, I'll move to adopt the findings supporting the zone change in Attachment 2 and approve application subject to performance standards included in the Plan Development Ordinance and introduce the ordinance affecting the zone change from CH to CHPD in the desk item, with the exception of returning the language on BMP to its original state. And that's in Section 2 and condition number 4 on the desk item.
And I will second that as well.
All right.
Follow that one?
Would you return to the specific reference? This is in the desk item ordinance, correct?
Yes, Mayor. The staff gave us the desk item with a few changes, and on page 1 of 26, it references the BMPs. At that time, they took out.
I'm sorry, I thought you said in item 4, so you're actually referring to item 3.
In section 2, number 3.
Yeah.
And then on the actual conditions over on page 3, item number 4 also talks about the BMP.
Okay.
And I think those are the only 2 places.
I'm sorry, when I heard the first,
Yeah, I
thought you
understand.
used 4 rather than 3 when you made
Well, there are many
the
3s and 4s
citation.
in this document, so.
All right. All right, understood. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. So we are now at the ordinance point in this motion. Further discussion. Councilwoman Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following up on what I started to say earlier, with regard to the commercial use of this property, I can appreciate what Mr. Leonardis was saying, but given our boulevard plan, given the fact that we just did the general plan, I can accept having and could support residential on this piece of property. With regard to the BMPs, that's actually a much harder call for me. I have a real strong belief in having the below market price units integrated with all of the other housing and not being moved off campus, so to speak. But this is one example where I could support it, given the fact that there will be a large for sale unit on the property, and there will be a second unit that will not be in a below market price area for the second housing. So in this one case, I can go along with having the BMP, one on campus and one off campus. What I can't do is support the density. The applicant was discussing the fact that his homes will have the look and feel of the town, will have varied architecture, will have quality construction, will have good landscaping, will have the landscaping median, which I actually think is a great idea, will remove blight. I actually don't disagree with any of those things. I think that those things will all happen, but I also don't think you need 22 units on 1.9 acres to have every single one of those things happen. All of those things can occur, and I'm sure would occur with this developer if there were less units per the 1.9 acre. The density is being allowed, once again, by our planned development ordinance. And I think every single application since I've been on this council in 2004 has been a PD. And PDs, as the Planning Commission, many of the planning commissioners noted, look for open space and good design. And we can have more open space and equal good design with less density. What happens with the PD is that the developer is not being required to comply with setbacks, limitations on lot coverage, and parking. And so therefore you get to the density. And as the mitigated negative declaration pointed out, neighbors have 5 to 6 units per acre, which is 6,600 to 8,000 square feet. Bluebird has 5,452 gross square feet per unit. This one has 3,766 gross square feet per unit. So what happens is we're just going down and becoming more and more dense. And so people say, well, yeah, but it's not, you can't really tell us how it's going to affect the traffic, or you can't really tell us how it's going to affect the schools. Not really, not precisely. Well, I can tell you that it's not going to help it. And to the extent that it impacts it, it will hurt it. And so the last point is that we have to decide between decreasing density and increasing price point. No, we don't. All we have to do is have good land use. And with good land use, your price points will be just fine. And just because you don't allow 22 units on 1.9 acre, that does not necessarily mean that the alternative is going to be that you are going to have large, expensive homes. That's all a matter of what the Planning Commission and the Council decide, and it's all a matter of setbacks, lot coverage, and parking.
No, ladies and gentlemen, we don't allow that in this house. Words speak for themselves, okay? I'd like to make a comment. You know, in some ways, I think that if we only define density as how little space we have for how many larger homes we develop, then probably the Almond Grove wouldn't have been developed, because that's a really dense neighborhood. And I think it's the crowning jewel of our neighborhood mix because of the fact that it has such character. I think one of the points I want to make, and I believe the Vice Mayor said it in an earlier comment, there are various types of housing that we have in this community, and some are underrepresented. And I think one of the issues that we have underrepresented are smaller homes. And I think that what I see here is an opportunity to develop a component of housing that we have not been very diligent in doing up to this point in time. And it will allow some people to have the ability to live in this community, and some people who live in this community now, the ability to downsize, because it's time for them to find a smaller home. I think that it's really important that we keep in mind this idea of the housing mix that we want and have achieved in this community up to this point. But I do think that there's a missing component, and it's the size of homes that are being proposed here. I also think that one of the benefits that we have in this type of development is quality, and as Councilmember Spector indicated, there's no question about the quality of the product that we're going to get here, because we have a track record in the Robson Home Developers that guarantees that we will be very proud of what occurs. And ultimately, the homes will be purchased by people who want this type of home in this size of lot in this type of neighborhood. And I think that's really the issue that has been unspoken, is that not everyone wants the type of home that perhaps I have, or you have, or people in other neighborhoods have. But there are some homes in this project as proposed that will appeal to a number of people who at this point in time may not be able to find this type of home and this type of site. So for every point, there's a counterpoint. We're always, and this is the most interesting part of this job, is that we value various things in this community, and ultimately decisions are based on competing values. And you try to achieve as many of the values as you can as a project comes forward. And the hope is that, you know, as you balance, one value diminishes slightly to the benefit of another value. And in this particular case, I see a value to the type of home and the size of lot, and indeed the density that's being proposed here. Other comments or discussion? Seeing none, then I think we'll call the question. All those in favor indicate aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
All right, this motion passes 3-2 with Councilwoman Spector and Councilman Leonardis in opposition. I believe that takes us to a break, okay? And when we return from a 5-minute break, we will go to item number 12, which is the Creekside Sports Park Master Plan. is called back to order. We're on item number 12, which is the Los Gatos Creekside Sports Park Master Plan. And I believe we have Christy Walter here to present to us this evening. Ms. Walter?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Before I begin the presentation, I'd like to call your attention to the desk item we submitted. There are two main items within the desk item. The first is the replacement of the original site plan with a full master plan document. When this report was published, we still had the previous site plan document, which showed the pedestrian bridge connection to the Los Gatos Creek Trail. We received an updated document on Friday, September 30th, and that allowed us an opportunity to insert that site plan, the updated site plan that followed the Planning Commission review, into the same format that we have used for both the Balzer Field Master Plan and the Blossom Hill Park Master Plan. So we would like to move that forward. In addition, we received today 2 public comments, both in reference to the previously proposed pedestrian bridge connection. I'm going to start the presentation with a few slides that you have seen before as review. I just wanted to make sure that everyone here has the project background to begin the presentation. This project did begin back in 2008 with the sale of 13 acres of land in Vasona Park. That it was then continued with the purchase of the 930 University site in 2009 for $3 million. And the subsequent master planning for this new facility began in 2010 with the official adoption of the council guiding principles. I'm not going to review the guiding principles in detail again, but I did want to call attention to a couple of them that will become important in the discussion further in the presentation. One is the safe, convenient access to the park, and the second is the shared parking agreement that will be explored. We did conduct a community input process for the development of this park. It began with a community meeting to gather ideas on the potential uses of the park. We moved to presentation of concepts and a hands-on site planning activity, and concluded the formal input gathering process with the presentation of 2 main concepts and evaluation of those concepts against the guiding principles. The outcome of that process was the selection of a site layout that included the largest possible multi-use sports field. Our stakeholder outreach process continued past the community input process with a technical advisory committee. That committee was made up of the Santa Clara Valley Water District, Santa Clara County Parks, as well as representatives from our own police department. And in that technical advisory committee, we continued to gather input from those groups on the final proposed master plan for the site. We also took the proposed master plan to the Parks Commission in April of this year, and the Parks Commission did vote 6-2 in favor of that proposed master plan. And we brought the park to the council on May 16th of this year as an update and as an opportunity to gather additional input on the proposed master plan. Based upon the feedback that we received through that community and stakeholder input process, we began the environmental review for this project. It was during the physical work that was associated with that environmental review that we began to get some feedback from the neighbors closest to the creek trail on the proposed pedestrian bridge option in opposition to specifically the location of the pedestrian bridge. Those concerns were focused around increased traffic, security, privacy concerns, after-hours activity, and visual impact. Staff did work with the neighbors, both on a one-on-one basis as well as in a neighborhood meeting to attempt to address those concerns. And we want to point out that we continued with the environmental review of that pedestrian bridge in order to preserve any future bridge options. Because the community process had identified a desire for a pedestrian bridge connection, and because we had presented that in a public forum, we did not want to take that off the table as that could be perceived as segregating the project. So we wanted to make sure that we brought that forward through the entire environmental review process and finally to the Planning Commission review. Staff did also, in the Planning Commission meeting, provide alternatives for pedestrian access that would be feasible to explore in lieu of or in addition to the pedestrian bridge, and we will talk about that in part of our staff recommendations. We'll move then to the Planning Commission review of this project. On August 24th, the Planning Commission did approve the conditional use permit, the mitigated negative declaration, and the architecture and site application for this particular site. That CUP includes conditions of approval. One notable one is the requirement for a shared parking agreement with the 980 University site in order to accommodate the peak site parking needs. We also, at that meeting, the Planning Commission approved the site demo and the mitigation and monitoring plan. There was a 6-0 vote in favor of the project. The pedestrian bridge connection that was proposed in the master plan that we presented to the Planning Commission was not included in this approval. There were several discussions and recommendations that were brought forward out of the Planning Commission meeting. All of them had to do with safe pedestrian access. The first was to explore a sidewalk connection on University Avenue, on the east side of University Avenue, between Lark Avenue and the park entrance in order to facilitate safe pedestrian access from Lark Avenue. The second was to explore safety features to protect pedestrians, along the access road from University to the park that goes through the 950 University site. There are two specific options that staff is recommending. One is to install a section of rail immediately adjacent from the stairway exit that will come from the parking area at 980 University, which I'll point out as we look at the site plan, in order to discourage pedestrians from walking straight from the parking area onto the roadway. You've probably seen these before in areas where we don't have a crosswalk and we want to discourage people from crossing the street in those locations, so something similar to that. We're also exploring the option of putting speed humps on the access road. And the last item was to explore other bridge alignments at a future date. The Planning Commission did recommend that we hold off on a bridge connection at this point, but should the desire for a bridge connection be necessary, the 2003 Santa Clara County Park Study that was referenced in the report, which looked at two other alternatives for a pedestrian bridge connection, one over the top of the dam and one at the base of the dam, are two options that we could look at, or alternate bridge alignments. And staff would take any of those potential alignments out to the neighborhood for community input prior to moving forward. I'd like to move now to the site concept plan. You have seen this before in a similar form. You'll notice that the pedestrian bridge connection is no longer noted. I'd like to highlight again the features of the site. We have a 180 by 300 foot multi-use sports field. We have a parking lot with 41 on-site spaces. The proposed parking area, I'm going to try to see if I can, I'm pointing the wrong way, sorry. The proposed parking area at 980 University, if you can imagine, if you can follow my laser pointer off the map, is actually over off of to the side of the access road, and there will be a stairway connection made to facilitate access to and from that parking area. And that agreement will be put into place, again, as a condition of approval for this site. There is a passenger drop-off zone. That zone was made wide enough to accommodate cars passing the drop-off zone, as well as emergency vehicle access through the area. We have a 10-foot path that leads from the parking area to the far end of the site to the concession and restroom facility and picnic area. And that will facilitate maintenance access to that area as well. And we did add a tot play area to the picnic section. I will be able to show a better drawing of that on the next slide as part of the feedback that we received from the May 16th meeting. And the last thing that I'd like to point out is the spectator seating area, again, at the base of the park, facing away from the adjacent neighborhood. This is another rendering of the park. This is a colorized version of our 35% design plan. And in this particular picture, you can see the tot boulder play area that was added to the picnic area, and a better idea of the scale of the restroom, concession, and storage building. That brings me to the recommendations. There are 3 recommendations for the report this evening. To approve the Creekside Sports Park Master Plan, to direct staff to explore options for providing pedestrian sidewalk access to the sports park from Lark Avenue to the sports park entrance on University Avenue, and to direct staff to explore alternative alignments for a pedestrian bridge connection between the Los Gatos Creek Trail and the Creekside Sports Park. And I'd like to conclude the presentation with an overview of the next steps pending the decision this evening. We would like to move forward with a groundbreaking ceremony. We have tentatively scheduled that for October 18th, 2011. Council approval of plans and specifications is planned for January 17th, 2012. The selection and approval of a contractor would occur on in March of 2012, and grand opening of the facility in fall of 2012. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions of staff? Let's start with Ms. McNutt.
Thank you. I have 2 or 3 questions. On the tot lot, which I actually don't remember from our discussion previously, can you describe what that would consist of?
Sure. The tot lot would be one medium-sized climbing boulder made for a play structure with pour-in-place rubberized surface around the boulder area.
So when you said small, you actually meant small?
Small.
Okay. And then a couple questions on parking. The number of parking spaces at 980 University that we might be able to access would be how many?
25.
And how are we going to protect the parking of 950 University? Because that's a storage unit, so our residents are going to be going there mostly on the weekends to get out their Christmas stuff or put away their snow gear or whatever. So how do we protect to make sure that those spaces aren't used up by visitors to the park?
We've talked about 3 ways to address that. One is through signage and patrol. The second is that the storage facility will have an on-site 24-hour manager that can help assist with that. And the third is that we've had discussions with the potential users of the facility to at least get their verbal commitment to help educate the users of the facility about the parking regulations for that site.
And when you say users of the facility, you mean users of the park?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. And then, if I might, and then in the master plan, there's actually on page 4, it starts getting into some operational descriptions, and I understand that this will be fine-tuned as we go along, but there were a couple things that I wanted to clarify or emphasize at this point, if we could. So is the park itself open to the public every day, or is it only open if it's a scheduled use?
The exact details of that would still be ironed out as you reflected. However, that would be somewhat dependent upon the use agreement that we come up with. We would like to preserve the use of the park for as many groups as possible. So what we're thinking at this point is that the use agreement would be structured similar to the Los Gatos Little League agreement, where there are times of exclusive use for one particular group, and then we could work on programming the site for alternative uses when the site isn't being used by that particular exclusive use agreement.
Okay, and that's really where I was headed, because when I look here and it talks about proposed hours starting at 9 a.m. During the week and specific times for soccer practice and so on, I don't like the idea of this park sitting idle when it's not being used for soccer practice or soccer games, and I could see a lot of potential uses partnering with recreation for activities during the day, Tai Chi early in the morning, boot camps even. It's such a great location because it has very little impact on any neighborhood, and it's not around a school, so we don't have another traffic issue. So I would hope as this gets fine-tuned that we figure out how to maximize the potential of use for the new asset by everyone in the community.
Thank you. Other comments or questions for staff? Seeing none, then we do have a member of our public who would like to speak. Elaine Outler.
Big surprise. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you for the chance to speak again tonight. For the first time in months, I'm thrilled to be here, not in protest, but to brainstorm. On August 24th, when the Planning Commission approved the conditional use permit for the park without the pedestrian bridge, they directed staff, as you know, to explore other options for a connection between the trail and the park. Over the last few months, neighbors have given me many great ideas for other ways to skin this cat, some more practical than others, some more affordable than others, but all are most definitely worth putting back on the table for consideration now. One of the most obvious and popular was building a sidewalk along the east side of University. And I'm delighted to see that it's already on tonight's agenda and in staff's presentation. Another great idea included completing a trail extension behind the Atari Foundry buildings along the western border of the creek. In addition to providing safe trail access between the trail and the park, this gives these businesses a new perk. It gives tenant employees better trail access for lunchtime walks and breaks. Commissioner O'Donnell urged further investigation into a bridge across the top of Vasona Dam. On the surface, this seems to be a logical place, but it also runs the risk of compounding real and existing privacy, noise, and parking issues for Las Moradas and Garden Hill homes. Another suggestion was to cross the creek in a location where residents along Las Astas and Las Moradas would not be impacted, such as at the power utility crossing on Las Astas. This bridge would be connected to a smaller trail extension along the western edge of the creek and then connected adjacent to the creek to the sports park. But probably the most elegant solution of all was to complete the trail around Vasona by engineering a sidewalk along the tricky and dangerous part of University. I use the word engineering intentionally, knowing that it would be challenging, but this solution not only solves the problem of park access, it eliminates a long-standing bike and pedestrian safety problem along this treacherous stretch of road, and it will provide safe walking and biking to the future light rail station for many residents south of Lark Avenue. This solution is most definitely worth considering for more reasons than just the sports park. The bottom line, there are other solutions to getting pedestrian park users safely to the park. I'm pleased that the Planning Commission has made it possible to take the time to consider them more carefully and hope the solution chosen benefits all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Outler. And we have another speaker, Terry McBriarty.
Evening. My name is Terry McBriarty. I live at 15075 Garden Hill, and I have no problem with the sports complex. I think it's a great idea. My only issue is with traffic on University. It's a dangerous intersection at University at Lark. I think there is some kind of plan to put a signal there at some point, but in the interim period, adding any kind of traffic with people dropping off kids, going to and fro there, The signal at Garden Hill goes out all of the time. I come home, the signal is functioning as a red light blinking on and off. I've inquired as to why this happens. Been told the signal is under the control of Caltrans instead of the town of Los Gatos. Supposedly, you guys are going to get control of that and control all of the signals, and it will be all miraculously fixed when the Albright Way thing happens, if that happens, whatever. I don't know how that's going to happen if you guys can't even get the signal to work consistently. But I very often come from Garden Hill Drive and I'm going to turn left on University, only to have people come out from University from a stop sign, turn left towards Winchester, cut across in front of me. This has happened numerous times. People turning left from University to go towards Winchester Boulevard get very impatient because there's no, whatever you want to call it, waiting lane in there for them to pull from University to wait in to pull over, and they just pull out in front of people. And I can't believe there's not more accidents there. It's a very dangerous intersection. I don't think it's a safe. I never turn left from University onto Lark Avenue. I think it's a very dangerous thing. I don't think it should even be legal at any time of the day because it's unsafe. There's other things to do. You could go and turn out on the other roads and go out onto Winchester. And I would like to see a no left turn sign there. I think that would make people safer, and people drive way too fast on University anyways. And if there's going to be kids walking up and down going to that, people rushing around, taking shortcuts on University isn't a good use of the road if there's going to be kids on bikes, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ed San Juan.
Mr. Mayor, while Ed is coming forward, could Christie provide an update on the traffic signal at Larkin University?
Certainly that's possible. I was thinking we'd finish with our public and then do that, but this is as good a time as any.
Okay, the award for the construction of that signal is scheduled to come to council on the 17th.
Thank you. Mr. San Juan.
Good evening. Ed San Juan, 17860 Bruce Avenue, Los Gatos, resident of Los Gatos since 1977. Dear Mayor, dear Town Council members, I thank you for taking us on this great ride this far. And I would beg that you approve the Creekside Master Plan. There are other issues that are in front of Christie right now that our folks are ready to step in and be good community partners with. As far as the safety of the children, it's crucial, it's imperative. They are our most important asset, and so safety is absolutely our objective as well. So we will do everything we can to get the word out, to educate our people, and also to step in and help in any way we can. Throwing cones out in mornings, anything you like, we can do. And I just want to reiterate that the pedestrian bridge option is, we talked about it at a previous meeting, and if it gets in the way of this getting done, we would definitely forgo that in order to get the property developed. But please approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. San Juan. And that's my last card. Anyone else wish to speak to this item now? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion and look to the council for a motion and discussion. Yes, Vice Mayor.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to take the recommended action, which is to approve the, I'll call it the revised Creekside Sports Park Master Plan as delivered to us in the desk item. Direct staff to explore the options for providing pedestrian sidewalk access from Lark, and also to direct staff to explore alternative alignments for a pedestrian bridge at some point in the future that would come back to us anyway.
Second.
Right, so it's been moved and seconded to approve the recommendations of staff for the Creekside Master Plan. This is an exciting point for us. I assume if we do get passage here tonight, and I know it's a long shot, but we may just get that, then look forward to groundbreaking, and the beginning of the process will get us to the fall and that opening day with all the kids out there playing their little hearts out. And that would be a great accomplishment for the community and for everyone who's been a participant in this. And Mr. San Juan will accept all the help you and your organization can bring us to make sure that anything we need gets done, and we do appreciate that. All right, so with the motion on the table, we have a question or a comment from Councilman Leonardis.
So one quick question for staff. At one point in time, we applied for a grant from the Water District. I was just wondering what the status of that is, and if we do not build the bridge, can that be applied towards sidewalks on Lark?
The grant has been approved. We have 5 years to execute the completion of a bridge connection. We are not able to reallocate those funds with the current agreement, so we would need to return those funds if we chose not to create the bridge connection.
Mr. Leonardis, any further comments on that? You okay? Ms. Spector?
Thank you. A bridge connection or that bridge connection?
A bridge connection. The grant application actually proposed 3 different alternatives with a recommended alternative that was actually an alternative previous to the one we brought forward to Planning Commission. The grant, the purpose of that particular grant funding is to connect trails to recreational facilities and to extend the trail system. So a bridge connection does both of those things, and that was the intent of our grant application.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. That brings us then to item 8, which was a pulled item. Item 8 is the North 40 Specific Plan update. And before we start this item, since this was inserted, having been pulled by a member of the council, I just wanted to let everyone know that we will be adjourning tonight's meeting in honor of the Vice Mayor, Steve Rice, because this is his birthday today, okay? And wanted to make sure he knew that we were recognizing that and duly acknowledged his wisdom and age. So with that, Ms. Roney, you want to present for this item?
I'd be happy to do a quick presentation or answer questions, whichever is the council's pleasure.
Well, I'll tell you what my pleasure is. My pleasure is to ask why Ms. McNutt pulled the item from consent.
Thank you, Mayor. What I have said previously when we get updates on the North 40 and acknowledging that I am not a member of the North 40 Advisory Committee, it's not one of my assignments, 2 other council members are, and therefore I don't have the same experience and background on all the discussions that are going on. But what I have said is I am concerned about moving down a path that is unfair to both the community and the developer, in looking at a plan that is not realistic for actually getting approved in this community. And it's moving down. It's moving down. And what alarmed me a little bit is the statement in here that after the next, as I understand it, after the next advisory committee meeting, there would be another written report to council, and then it would immediately start in on the environmental technical review studies. I would feel more comfortable if after the next advisory committee meeting, council has a chance to not just review a report, but to actually have a significant and serious discussion about how comfortable we are with the direction of travel and whether or not we believe that it's actually ready for starting those technical environmental review. Because once you start the environmental review, the assumption is by a lot of people, this is what's actually going to be built. And I just would rather that we not put everyone through a lot of angst unless we are all in agreement, or not, or majority is in agreement that this is a fair and accurate picture of what we want to happen on that land.
All right, other comments, Councilwoman Spector?
As one of the two people who is on that committee, let me back up a little bit. When I saw this staff report, I was concerned about how it would come across to people who weren't on the committee, and I raised that issue with staff, and I still have that concern. And the response was there's going to be a lot more detail when it comes back, I think, next month. The challenge with what Councilmember McNutt is saying is that the process is it goes from the advisory committee to the planning commission to the council, and then if I understand Ms. McNutt correctly, it can jump to the council, and then the council gives its input, which would seem to be ignoring the advisory committee and the planning commission. However, having said that, the way it could work and still accommodate the council is that the council can just give its input, and then it would go back to the advisory committee. But what I'm struggling with here is how do we address the issue raised by Ms. McNutt and still keep the process of advisory committee, planning commission, council.
Okay, Ms. McNutt?
Thank you. And it was not my intention to circumvent the process at all, but just to put an extra step in there for a council discussion and agreement on direction before it goes to technical review, because that technical review is part of then, as I understand it, what the advisory committee sums up as its final recommendation package that then goes to planning commission and then goes to council. Does that make sense? So I wasn't trying to leapfrog over, but only to make sure that those next steps after technical review by advisory committee and planning commission reflect what we're thinking.
Yes, Ms. Spector?
Thank you. Let's see how it works in the real world. And this is totally hypothetical, because I'll tell you this is not where the advisory, let's say the advisory committee says, we are comfortable with 5 stories on all of the residential and commercial buildings. And then that's in a report and it comes up to council. Council says, no way, we're saying 35 feet or less. At that juncture, would you see that the council has now weighed in and said, not 5 stories, 35 feet, or it would just be information that would go back to the advisory committee?
I have no idea. I don't know how I don't know how that would work out in terms of a process thing. That's what the folks to my right get to figure out. I just think to use your hypothetical example, to have us do a perfunctory review of a written report, have it start the environmental report based on that entire 40 acres covered with 5-story buildings is going to be non-productive because the likelihood of that happening is small, and the hysteria from the community is going to just be overwhelming, and it would just change. It would get us off track, I think, of the serious work that we should be doing on this. So I don't know the steps of how this would work, but I just am alarmed. I'm just alarmed.
Okay, Manager and Ms. Rooney want to weigh in on this?
The director and I have just talked, and there's possibly 2 options available for the council. We do think the council review of what the General Plan Advisory Committee is moving towards prior to launching all the detailed environmental review makes a lot of sense, to make sure we're not on a track that the council doesn't want to explore or has additional issues to be explored. The 2 options we have for you would be one that we used on the Creekside Sports Park Master Plan. That was a town project that came to you on May 16th for conceptual review of the direction as we then launched the environmental review and went to Planning Commission and then back to council if it had been appealed to you as a land use action. The specific plan is really a town project. The specific plan is not an application, it's a town project. So we could follow that same process. The General Plan Advisory Committee at its next meeting finishes its recommendations on the scope of the project and the project description as the Parks Commission reviewed the conceptual Creekside Parks Master Plan. That comes to you for review to then send it through the land use and evaluation process, including environmental review, Planning Commission, and Council. That's one option. The second option is to convene another joint meeting of the Council and Planning Commission, as you did early in the North 40 process, to have both bodies hear the direction of the North 40 Advisory Committee and provide input and direction at that point. Those are the two options from staff.
All right, thank you, Councilman Spector.
The reason that I brought up the process question is because the General Plan Advisory Committee struggles with processing this application every single meeting. And so how we process it is an issue, and it's something that we're still trying to put our arms around. My concern with the sports park analogy is that when the sports park came up to us, to the council, it felt like a done deal, and I don't want the North 40 to feel that way. I don't analogize the General Plan or the North 40 Advisory Committee to the Parks Commission in the sports park again comparison. Convening a meeting where the advisory committee could hear from the council, that might be okay. But I don't know what the answer is. I just know that it is a struggle processing this specific plan.
Okay, and as the other member on the committee, I agree with Councilwoman Spector's assessment. And if you notice on page 3 of our staff report, the last paragraph before next steps, the staff will be recommending another committee meeting. Is that correct, Ms. Rooney? To finalize height discussion, ranges, or percentages of proposed uses, and affirm prior committee direction. There's a lot of stuff there. I mean, this is not lightweight. There's multiple issues that are yet unresolved, and for that purpose, then I do think it's appropriate that the committee get its chance to come to some closure. But what I see interesting is that when it goes from the committee to the deciding bodies, Planning Commission first and then the council, there needs to be some interim step of education or some form of dialogue that takes place wherein the council, the commission and the council can be brought up to where the current status is. Because it's almost like whatever the committee is doing is done in a vacuum with no real connection to the bodies that are going to make the decision. And I've got this sense that we are going through this committee process with lots of community input and lots of consultant input, and the end result is we're coming up with the kind of a direction where we still have so many different pieces to put in place, and yet we're going to face a commission, planning commission and council that really hasn't weighed in at any one point in time to say, you know, you're going in the right direction, or we're moving far afield, because so much of what we're doing in the committee is predicated on input from not only our consultants in the general concept of strategic plan development, but also the developer itself, the development organization, that is out there waiting in the wings, letting us know what are the kinds of things that they feel are viable from a financial perspective on this particular site. So it's not actually a pure system, because Grosvenor is there in the wings weighing in on what can and cannot happen, almost as if the council and the commission should be in a parallel role, saying in the wings, this can or cannot happen. So, I don't know the direction to take here. I do think there needs to be another step in here, someplace where there is a dialogue take place with the commission and the council about current status, and maybe a confrontation with conflicting ideas, if indeed conflicting ideas exist out there. Yes, Councilman Spector.
Thank you. Again, let's go hypothetically. I'm looking at this list on page 2, this list of types of uses that's at play out there, and this is the list I had a problem with when I saw it, because I thought it could be misleading. But as a person on the advisory committee, it would be, for example, interesting to me to find out what council members and planning commissioners feel about when they see the word major retail destination. I mean, are they going, and so that would be of interest to me as a member of the committee. So maybe we do need to just have the three bodies somehow just talk.
Vice Mayor.
I'll weigh in real quickly. I agree with Councilmember McNutt's concern. I have the same concern. I probably would be willing to wait until we get that next report, which may be more detailed, and maybe that gives us an opportunity to weigh in. But what I want to echo as a concern is that I'm going to use Ditto's Lane as an example. There was a perception that Ditto's Lane was the town's project and was kind of pre-approved when we had never heard it. We had never weighed in on it in any manner, shape, or form. But the town owned the land. So here the town is putting together a specific plan, and my concern echoes Councilmember McNutt's that whatever ends up in that document, there's going to be a perception that we have kind of pre-approved it. And before it goes to the point where we're doing those kind of technical and environmental reviews, I think it's got to be, because this is such a significant parcel of land and such an important project in town, I think it's got to be fleshed out maybe a little bit more at this level before it goes out there.
Councilwoman Spector.
I agree, and one of the issues that came up at the last General Plan Advisory Committee was, and this was just the committee in general, not the council people, not the planning commissioners, but just generally is, what is it exactly that this specific plan is? If we put a yellow block there that's a hotel and a blue block there that is a office building, what discretion do the subsequent reviewing bodies have? I personally am struggling with that issue. I think the other members of the advisory committee are struggling with that issue, and I think it's one of the issues that is supposed to be addressed at our next meeting, because it is of concern.
Yes, if I might weigh in, and when you point out the issues that still need to be addressed, these are major issues. And from the point of view of what we know is occurring, once the strategic plan is established, in effect, it moves. That is now our direction. That then allows, as we discussed in our last meeting with Ms. Rooney, that allows then the development to take place without much review by the other bodies, because the purpose of the strategic plan is to be able to move a large project forward. So if Ms. Rooney would comment to that for the council, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I've heard a lot of different things I probably should comment on. First off, I think there is a belief that as of this next meeting, that the consultants are all preparing the plan, and the town won't be seeing that plan for a long time until it's done, and that's not the case. The intent was to get the environmental review. There's a lot of environmental review technical studies that need to be conducted. It was to get a general project description something to the effect of there will be up to 500,000 square feet of commercial, up to a certain amount of residential units, a mixture of 1 to 4-story buildings with the potential for a 5-story hotel if the advisory committee gives their recommendation to move forward with that. Very general, not specific, that there will be 30,000 square feet of inline retail, there will be 40,000 square feet of sit-down restaurants, and so it's much more general. And I think there's we have to remember, because the town hasn't done really, they've done one specific plan before. This is a specific plan. It's not a project. It's not an application. So this will be an iterative process. The advisory committee is not done with their work after this next meeting or the next 2 meetings, whatever it takes to get the recommendation to move forward, or the advice to staff to move forward. It's an iterative process, and it will be back and forth. I think there is the perception, though, that once we start the studies, that is a project that we will be studying, that is a plan that we're studying, and I think that I even have to make that distinction. It's a plan, it's not a project. As I hear your discussions, I think it is important that there is some type of a joint meeting set up. Our concern is timing, is trying to, because we have lost a lot of time on this, and I know there isn't anything guiding the timing, except that I think it's really important that this plan's approved by this council. And so we do have somewhat of a time constraint on us. I think that the council that initiated this plan should be the council that approves it. The planning commission that initiated the plan should be the planning commission that approves it. So we do have somewhat of a time constraint. I think we'd like to try to find a time that we can make a joint study session. I think that would be important. I think we are at I'm not going to say a critical point, but we're at a pretty significant point here, and I think that's why you'll notice this report was a lot more information than you normally receive. And originally we had planned to give you a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation, which was a summary of what the advisory committee saw at their last meeting. Due to the length of the public hearings tonight, we decided we'd postpone that until the next update. So I think it's really the council's decision to decide how you'd like to proceed with this. I think the options that the town manager laid out were good options, that we can either work through a study session with the 3 bodies, as we've done one of those at the kickoff. We did the Joint Planning Commission Town Council meeting in, I think it was May. And alternatively, we could do a comprehensive presentation to the Planning Commission and one to the council. I think that's a lot. We'll spend a lot more money on our consultants with that, so I think I'd prefer us to try to do it together. Plus, I think it's really good for the 3 bodies to hear each other. So I would personally advocate for that. I think that makes the most sense. And I think this council's echoing the concerns that staff had too, that this is an important project for the town, and I think every decision-making role in this needs to be a part of it. So, and I guess I'm saying Planning Commission and Council need to be a part of it too.
I want to return to the original anxiety that Councilwoman McNutt expressed regarding the message sent to the community once we start into the technical, once we start into the environmental, because everything gets drawn out. The footprint now becomes something that is very clear, and it almost takes on a life of its own. And the message is that this is what the town wants. And I think that has been problematic for us, because that plan, that drawing, those sketches, the footprints, even though they are an expression of a potential project for purposes of environmental and technical, they, in the minds of the folks, begin to become set in stone. And this is what you guys are pushing, and then the response is, well, how do we push back? And I think that we experienced that with Dittos, and I would hate to see us go through that same exercise with this project. And in spite of the fact that it may cost a little bit more money, this is the major project for the century. And so if it takes a little bit more time and it costs a little bit more money to get to the project that we want, then I don't think you're going to have any member of council who's going to say, no, we can't do that. We've got to move forward more quickly and at less expense. So to me, that really, I would look forward to the staff discussing this and coming up with some proposal that would somehow accommodate these issues that have been raised here tonight. Okay, Councilwoman Spector?
I agree. I would say let's have all of the three bodies together. And I'm going to encourage staff to define for themselves and then for us what this plan really defines, and then even before that, the information that's going to the environmental review, what exactly has that defined? I mean, I don't understand it at this point, and I don't think I have heard it from staff, and I believe that we need that information before we go through to the three-way meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. And just two possibly final comments for me. I am not concerned on the timing. I mean, we've already have a different planning commission now than we did a few months ago. I mean, people come, people go, and that's just part of the public decision-making process. So I think it's an artificial deadline to say we need to have this approved before November of 2012 or before we change planning commission appointments or anything like that. I think it's more we need to take the time to do it right and to really be thoughtful and inclusive. And to that end, if we schedule a joint study session or meeting with Planning Commission and or the Advisory Committee, I would like to encourage that we have it here in council chambers so as to accommodate people, which was a problem. We had it over at the police building, and also can be televised, because this is really, really important for our future, and I think we just need to be as transparent as possible.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from council? Staff, any closing comments?
Only action is to accept the staff report. There is no other specific direction, but we hear the consensus of council, and we'll follow up on that.
Okay. We don't need a motion to accept the staff report. All right. So thank you very much for the presentation and for the discussion. It was very enlightening. Appreciate that. And again, happy birthday to the Vice Mayor as we close the meeting.